was a free man. Buccaneering Basil, a private bold was he. As a privateer, he knew no fear, he sailed the mighty sea. Again and again on the rolling main, his enemies would fly. When they heard his skull and crossbones and heard his battle cry. Avast, fair ye lovers!
Now on BBC One, it's time for another adventure in space and time with John Pertwee and the Police Box.
Quarantine session! What do you mean, Mr. Quarantine session?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the corner of Doctor Who fandom that features more changes of face in an average episode than one of the main characters in Ian Levine's AI reconstructions. It's the Police Box Live. Tonight we've reached the penultimate story in our trial of Series 7 of Doctor Who, with the Ambassadors of Death being brought before the court. Now, the Ambassadors of Death features the Doctor Who debut of Hadoke, a troupe of meticulously trained stuntmen who bring an added dimension of realism and dynamism to this debut Pertwee season, providing one of this story's most memorable set pieces, with the Brigadier and unit staging an action-packed fight in an abandoned London depository. Talking of which, I am joined as ever tonight by two men who would fit seamlessly into the Havoc setup. Why? Only just this weekend, they too are getting roughly fisted by a bunch of squaddies in a disused warehouse. It's Cameron Phillips and David Cummings.
That is a low bar even for you.
Yeah. I can always go
even
lower.
For you.
Good evening, you two. How are you?
God, absolutely fine.
Yeah. Wish I hadn't heard that and have that image in my head, but it's fine. I'll go over it.
You've had worse. Welcome along, everybody. It's sure to be a belt of an episode tonight as yet another Pertwee epic faces the cold hand of the law in our courtroom tonight. But we won't be serving justice alone. Oh no, because once again we've thrown open the doors to our online chamber of justice and ushered in a couple of special guests to brandish their forthright opinions before all and sundry. So let's find out who's going to be dusting down their wigs and robes tonight. Joining Cameron on the prosecution team tonight is a man in possession of a 100% win record on the Police Box Live. Now, the odds may be stacked against him tonight, but fear not, dear viewer, his prospects are still good. With a start like that, followed by a sudden and inexplicable collapse in form, he'll be a shoo-in to be the next manager of Aberdeen Football Club. Fire up the Bridies, it's the one and only Mr. Joe Ford.
Hello there. Oh, sorry, I'm still cleaning up my fist. Sorry, Cam. Do you know what?
He's muted his microphone.
I'm in a bit of a
a
bit of a bind tonight because I really love the Ambassadors of Death. However, for the purposes of this trial, no. I fucking loathe this story.
Good.
The biggest load of shit they ever put out. We're hemorrhaging viewers left, right, and centre. It's far too serious. It's going down. Oh no, it ain't going down, but we're going to bruise it a little bit, just a little bit.
You're just like daylight and a ball of magic there, Joe. We'll forgive you. That's your prosecution team tonight, but what of the defence? Well, joining Dave on the defence team tonight is an actor, stand-up comedian, presenter and podcast host who'll be a very familiar voice and indeed face to many of you watching tonight, thanks to the numerous documentaries he's fronted for the DVD and Blu-ray collection range. In the course of his adventures, he's lived with Levine, he's weekended with Waterhouse, he's even lighthoused with Leela. Tonight, however, he's putting up with Pillix. He's the man who once refused to serve Wallace Hussein at the BBC bar. He is, of course, the one and only Mr. Toby Hadoke.
Hello. Well, how nice to make my debut on this podcast, defending something that should need no defence. I mean, Nobody should be attacking it. It's the Ukraine of. Let's not get into that. Of the Doctor Who. Well, at least it proving we're live. Yeah, it's nobody should be attacking this, and those who are, I think, have ulterior motives. So keep your hands off my minerals. I'm going to be asking everybody out there for help in order to defend what is justly defended, which is all 7 episodes of the Ambassadors of Death.
And not one of us is wearing the suit.
It was attacked for a long time, wasn't it, this one?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the official history, I'm sure we'll get into this, but, I came to this story with the official history being, there were things that happened in later episodes that contradicted what happened in episode 1, as if that was unusual. As in Doctor Who, never. And it was because the production team had a bit of a mare with it. I think they always talked of it as, oh God, that was a bit of a nightmare. So it was only when one watched it, and it was certainly not a story I was particularly after watching. So it was one of the last that I decided to see when I was making my way through Doctor Who. And I was a friend introduced me to it though, who said, "Oh, you should watch The Ambassadors of Death." And I went, "Oh, it's a bit of a clunker, isn't it?" He went, "No, it's amazing," and showed me like the first minute and the end of episode 0, as it were. And I immediately went, "Oh, hang on, this isn't what people were telling me. I was expecting something a bit rough around the edges." So yeah, and I think how you come to a story also does affect your opinion of it. So this will probably be quite a personal journey for each and every one of us.
Well, we'll certainly find out if it's a clunker or not tonight, because the Ambassadors of Death is going on trial. Before we get started, let's have a little look at the series results so far. So first up, Spearhead from Space went before the court with our guest Mikey Smith. It was found not guilty by 75% to 25%. And last time round, Doctor Who and the Silurians and Benton was found not guilty by 71% to 29%. All of which means that Dave leads the series 2-0 with 2 trials remaining. However, if Dave wins tonight, because he's not here next time, we're going to reveal the next series that's going to go to trial in the Police Box Live. Isn't that right, Dave?
That's the plan, yep. It all depends if I win or not, though, obviously. There's always the chance that we lose. The prosecution do make good points, usually.
We're literally doing this trial as the Season 7 Blu-ray set is landing on people's laps. We don't have a hope, but let's have fun.
As I've said, I would love to say that I planned this all along when I picked Season 7 and I knew the Blu-ray was coming out. I didn't. It's all an accident. It's fine, but it's all an accident.
A happy one.
I'm considering a win tonight if one person votes guilty. Just one, all right?
Well, Joe, that'll probably be me.
So we've won. Hurrah!
You can make it too, Joe.
Yeah.
That saved us all 3 hours then, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a moral victory, that's enough.
Well then, let's find out if that prophecy is false or not, because it's time once again to go back to 1970, the rock and roll years. Will the prosecution expose tonight's story as nothing but an empty vessel, or will the defence convince you that the ambassadors are really spoiling us? Let's find out as we put the Ambassadors of Death on trial.
Play with the big boys, wanna ride with the tough guys on a Japanese motorbike. I wanna hold your hand. Hey, what's your favorite band, honey? I wanna look like they look, I wanna shake like they shook, I wanna take what they took, I wanna get you high, but don't ask me why. It's just something I gotta do. I'll try to make it up to you. I'm a bad ambassador for that elusive place you're searching for. I wanna show you so much more. Well, maybe some other time.
The Ambassadors of Death was written by a combination of David Whittaker, Trevor Ray and Malcolm Hulk. It was directed by Michael Ferguson, produced by Barry Letts, and had music by Deadly Dudley Simpson. Grab yourselves a cup of tea and a biscuit, because here comes the cast list. It starred John Pertwee as the Doctor, Caroline John as Liz Shaw, and Nicholas Courtney as Brigadier Alistair Lethbridge Stewart, with John Levine as Sergeant Benton, John Abanieri as General Carrington, Ronald Allen as Ralph Cornish, Robert Codron as Bruno Tatalian, Cheryl Molyneux as Miss Rutherford, Robert Robertson as Collinson, Ray Armstrong as Gray, Dallas Gavil as Sir James Quinlan, Michael Wisher as John Wakefield, William Dicer as Regan, Cyril Shaps as Lennox, Juan Moreno as Dobson, Gordon Stern as Heldorf, John Lord as Masters, Tony Harwood as Flynn, Roy Scammell as the technician, Bernard Martin, Joanna Ross and Carl Conway as the control room assistants, Derek Ware as the unit sergeant, James Haswell as Corporal Champion, James Clayton as Private Parker, Geoffrey Beavers as Private Johnson, Max Faulkner as the unit soldier, Peter Noah Cook as the alien space captain, Rick Felgate as Van Leyden, Steve Peters as Leffy, Neville Simons as Michaels, and Peter Halliday as the alien voices. It was broadcast between Saturday the 21st of March 1970 and Saturday the 2nd of May 1970, and the viewing figures were 7.1 million for Part 1, 7.6 million for Part 2, 8 million for Part 3, 9.3 million for Part 4, 7.1 million for Part 5, 6.9 million for Part 6, and 5.4 million for Part 7.
What
Deep
happened
breath. Those are the facts and figures for nerds like us. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. It is time to call this court to session.
This court is now in session.
The trial of the Ambassador's death is underway. Here is doing what tonight. Cam and Joe are going to be prosecuting the Ambassadors of Death. Dave and Toby are going to be the defence team. As is traditional, let's get started with this.
This is the law, Chapter 1.
Once again, we've thrown open the courtroom doors to invite you, the viewers, to take to the stand and give us your evidence on the Ambassadors of Death. We've got a big old chunk of it, so let's just crack on. First up tonight, it's Big Orange Michael, who says...
Oh boy, here we go. Go on.
It's a good story and a great season. There are some superb visuals here, and Unit is still a competent middle-to-day group. Some memorable music, better sipped like a fine wine, an episode or two per day than binged. It does kind of end, leaving a few questions in its wake. Establishes Malcolm Hulk as one of the most consistent writers of the Pertwee era. I love that 7 episodes gives us time for some memorable moments like the body hidden in the rock pile and Bessie's security system moment.
You know, you said there about you sort of sip it like a fine wine over a couple of days. I actually thought the 2.5 minutes you managed to sort of sum up the Ambassadors of Death in there in that bit a second ago, it made it seem so exciting, didn't it? Maybe you should just watch that tiny little chunk. 3.5 hours is a long time.
Just cut right down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there are certain other activities where, you know, the burst of excitement is what it's all about. But without the build-up, I
would know nothing about that, Toby.
Right, you're straight in like Flynn, are you, Joe?
Yes.
But we're painting the Ambassadors of Death as foreplay tonight, are we?
Yeah,
that's the message.
It's the tantric of Doctor Who. Sting's favourite Doctor Who story, you know.
One man is aged like a fine wine and can manage tantric or otherwise. It's David Gillespie Pratt who says, not guilty, and also not guilty again. A story fan wisdom said for years wasn't very good, but it's bloody marvellous. The writing, whoever was responsible, the direction, the acting, the music, all brilliant. It's not your typical Doctor Who, but it's one of my favourites.
You got to remember, he doesn't get out much, all right? And also, the writing, the direction, the acting, the music, I think 3 of those statements are true, and 1 of those statements is false, but we'll get there.
One of these things is not like the others. Okay. Next up
It
is
was a pity
Daniel
laugh, all right.
It says this about the Ambassadors of Death. The best of the season for me. A Poxon received fan wisdom that this was muddled in too long. Dudley's great last score until probably Genesis. Michael Ferguson's direction confidently and stylishly papers over the cracks in the convoluted script. Great performances all round, apart from Tatalian and his amazing French accent, which disappears when he's driving a car.
French!
Get in, monsieur.
French!
Also, I think the way Miss Rutherford says the word communications in episode 1 is weirdly sexy, but don't judge me on that.
It is the tantric Doctor Who.
There's nothing weirdly sexy about it. It's just sexy.
How much can we rely on the opinion of a man who says that Dudley doesn't do a good score between Ambassadors of Death and Genesis of the Daleks? Madness.
There's a piece of evidence that may have to be thrown out, Joe.
He should have done more. We would have been spared that electronic nonsense in the Sea Devils.
Next up, Ed Jacobs, who's a newbie, so welcome aboard, Ed.
Hello.
Hello. He says, Ambassadors, it's my favourite classic Who story of them all. It's brilliant.
I'll give him that, straight to the point.
Yes, concise.
No fanning on
there.
there.
A very sort of butch man as well, Ed Jacobs. This is his favourite Doctor Who story.
Is that not just what you default to anyway? Just picturing a very butch
Pretty
man.
much, yeah.
Next up, Hannah Cooper has been in touch to say this. The TV space broadcasts are great. They feel close to a contemporary style. I love the story's early mysteriousness and Quatermass vibes, but I'm less gripped later. It's a good rather than a great memorable story, and 7 episodes. It really could have done maybe a couple shorter. It's no Inferno.
Ooh.
She was going so well up until the last 2 words. Or 3 words.
You probably could confidently say that about all the 7 parts this season.
More on that next week.
I think Cam has. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, next up, another newbie, Edwards. Hello, Edwards. Edwards.
Hello.
Yes. I love the conspiracy on this one, and I enjoy seeing it pulled back layer by layer. The Doctor's journey into space is a more traditional style and striking, feels very different from the rest of the show, but is all the stronger because of it.
I feel like perhaps we should all join the prosecution, because I don't think it's going to matter. Just a feeling I've got.
I think you could be right.
Maybe.
Well, the next person, and could go the other way. I mean, it's definitely going to be long because it's Fraser Gregory.
Oh boy.
It says, Ambassadors of Death is not just the best story of the season. It's not just the best story of the whole Pertwee era or the decade. It's one of the best stories in the whole of Doctor Who. Anyone who wants to prosecute this is clearly mad. Don't let them fob you off if any. I was just doing my duty, bollocks. I could talk for 7 hours about how great this story is, but for once I'll keep it short, says him, and I'll give you 7 reasons. 7, Liz Shaw getting to take the lead and drive the plot when separated from the Doctor. 6, the masterclass plotting from Hulk, Dix et al. 7 episodes that just don't drag at all. 5, all those wonderful cliffhangers that shouldn't work but do because of how well they're written and performed. 4, Regan, the ultimate 70s villain. Number 3, Michael Ferguson's superb direction. Number 2, Dudley's best score bar none. There's so many other reasons. The Doctor and Brig getting on for once, the action by Havoc, the hard sci-fi, the scary ambassadors themselves. But I'll leave it with the all-time number 1 reason.
Can I guess before you even change the slot? Oh, there it is.
Oh, the single greatest bit of ephemera in 60 years of Doctor Who, Liz Shaw's hat. This story is as not guilty as it's possible to be.
Is the hat super glued to her head? Because when she's driving in the car very fast, the wind is literally attacking her. That hat ain't moving.
It actually looks in that picture like maybe there's a strap going under her chin, like the hair's attached to the hat, and it's all like one safety device, and they've just hidden it.
I mean, a bit. It's a good argument, but then, the Archimandrite turned up in Azrael's of Tara with the best hat ever in Doctor Who. So
that is a fine hat.
I should like a hat like that. One person who would like a hat like that is Joe Short, who says, ambassadors of Liz Shaw's hats, and it's brilliant.
Wow.
Maybe we should.
This is going to be 2 hours of Liz Shaw's hat. Is this what this is going to be?
Yeah. That's where we're heading. We've already got two. Well, we've had one Joe. We've had another Joe on the call tonight. So let's have the hat trick. Let's go across the pond to our good pal Joe Llewellyn, who says, not guilty of the Fab Four stories in season 7. Ambassadors is the quiet one. You could almost call him George. But like George, Ambassadors is awesome. Also has one of my favourite reactions from my wife. She walked in during the warehouse fight and asked, "That's Doctor Who?" It sure is, baby. So I explained Unit and Havoc, and we watched Hadoke versus Havoc. She was impressed.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Well, I always like to hear when I've impressed somebody else's wife.
You impress my boyfriend all the time, I bet.
Good. Does that mean... am I your lube then, Joe? Is that...
Oh my God.
A little squirt of Hadoke and you're away.
I mean, you were on the other day when he was at... No, let's move on.
Let's move on quickly to Matt Foy. Another newbie. Hello, Matt. Matt says, not guilty. An all-time classic.
Wow.
Sensing a theme around these tweets.
Yeah.
The tables have definitely turned, haven't they?
Yeah, but whenever people do one of those, scoring ones or competitions or top threes or whatever, Ambassadors does always lag behind the rest of season 7, which is why I'm always keen to give it some extra oomph as well, because I don't think it deserves to. I think season 7 is largely enjoyed these days, but Ambassadors is always seemed to be the one that the enjoyment comes with qualifications, whereas. Now, because of that, and maybe I'm one of those, I like the one that everybody else doesn't like, wankers. I would always give it an extra push, but I'm not sure. I will learn tonight whether that's because I'm one kind of wanker or a different kind of wanker.
Yeah, you ain't the only one, Toby. I defended Time and the Rani on this thing.
Oh, yeah, well.
And I won as well.
Yep.
Good Lord.
You're in the company of wankers, Toby. You're not alone.
Oh, dear.
But they're vast in number.
The important bit is tantric wankers.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can go for 7 whole episodes.
Yep.
Who's next? Dan N, who I believe is another new person. Hello, coming in the night. Hello, Dan.
I met Dan the other night. I met Dan the other day. Dan is
the BFI, wasn't he?
Dan is worth mentioning because Dan has only just come out of the closet, as it were. Doctor Who has always been a solo pleasure for Dan, and he came to the Savages at the BFI, and it was the first Doctor Who event he'd ever been to, and he'd never really told anybody or spoken to another Doctor Who fan or anything. So it's great that Dan has joined us tonight, and welcome, Dan, and I'm glad that he's having had a little taste. He's obviously sampling a little bit more. He'll be in a back alley, with a belt round his arm and mainlining the Sensorites before we know it. Well, no, he's probably watched the Sensorites, but talking to other people, being meetings, going, I'm Dan and I like the Sensorites,
Oh, beautiful!
Don't
Beautiful.
judge me.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard, Dan. Dan has this to say about the Ambassadors of Death. He says, Unit Dix, Let's, Earth, Liz, Havoc, Abineri, Wisher, plus
We
a ton
didn't
of
start the fire.
Plus a ton of other familiar Doctor Who faces. Love this one. Don't mind the stingy intro bit in the episode name either. The length, the silly conjuring trick with the tape reel, and Talian's on-off accent, the only slight downers. 8.5 out of 10 for me.
Nice.
Hang on, have I just accidentally done a really good joke? Because I did a sort of illusion of Dan going, I'm Dan and I like, and it was the Savages, wasn't he? He was at the Savages. Well, of course, and isn't the Savages serial AA?
Oh,
so
we may as well just end the stream here. Good night, everybody. Can't top that.
Yeah, I could do that. I'm allowed to do that joke. Welcome, Dan. Hooray. That was good. Oh, if only I'd had the courage of my convictions, I could have done a proper joke then. Anyway, there we go.
That is the standard. We've got a match, all right.
Yeah.
Let's just go.
No. We're in for this. We're in for this.
Okay.
This is what
Other stanzas we have to match tonight are those of Cliff Chapman, who says, "It's great, but the quality of surviving episodes after episode 1 always gave it such distance for me.
Check out the
It's
Blu-ray, Cliff.
It's nice to finally have a properly watchable copy, as the DVD fell rather short. Harsh. Lots of atmosphere. It is a shame that the Doctor and Liz spend so little time together, and the Doctor lacks warmth throughout."
Mm-hmm.
Is this the one where he comes up on the lift and goes, "My dear fellow, I simply don't happen to have a pass because I don't believe in them. That's why not." That's this one, isn't it?
That's this one.
Yeah.
Yep.
What do you mean lacks warmth? Charming.
I don't believe in necessary security at top secret establishment.
No. Well, that's it. You drive around the barrier, then you're in the control room. There's no step in between. It's fine.
I mean, it's very funny then when he starts arse-licking Cornish. Just, "Oh, my dear fellow," he goes, "Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm on the prosecution."
Yes, Joe. Yes, you are.
I'll try and remember this for an hour.
Don't do a Geordie Al.
No.
One man who can swan into any establishment he likes at any time he pleases is James HB, who says Ambassadors is guilty, but only of making all the rest of Doctor Who look bad. It's criminal we never got a sequel, and that season 8 pissed away the atmospheric world of season 7 to make Unit cosy. A triumph of showing how the world is being held back by little Englanders, and it at least acknowledges just how nightmarishly difficult and complex space travel might be, even if it does take time plotting lessons from Seeds of Death, while still keeping up the tension. It's the only magic trick that lets the story down, and maybe too small explosion, and it does a great job of predicting radioactive meals for those who need putting out of the way. Everyone is in top form, which is given the trouble creation of this story is a miracle. Magnificent from start to finish.
Wow.
He really fooled me with that first sentence there. I got so excited.
There was a lot of glimmer of hope for you there, Joe, wasn't there?
Yeah. Although, if it throws his evidence into doubt, I'd like to tell everybody here he's a huge admirer of the Chris Chibnall era and positively loathes everything that Stephen Moffat ever did. Okay, continue.
That sort of thing will not stand in my courtroom. Hating in this room? No.
We're not going to showrunner shame anyone.
No.
Barry, let's, man.
That's a whole different podcast. Next up is our very own glimmer of light is Gareth Bowley, who says, "I read the target book of this first and really enjoyed that. But this was one of the last classic Who's I saw, and the show itself never met the expectations set by the book, sadly. As a result, I find the Ambassadors of Death TV version a little disappointing."
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people do say that, don't they, about reading when they read the targets first and then they watch the stories afterwards.
Yeah, but Ambassadors is not one of those really, because it was quite a late book, and also it's a sort of Terence, by the numbers. Really, it's not like if Malcolm Hulke had written it and we'd had a whole backstory for Regan and a whole chapter from the point of view of the Lafay ambassador's left ventricle or whatever. I bet Dr. Lennox would have had whole swathes of reminiscences of disappointing meetings and not quite fulfilling his dreams from his domineering mother who'd said he'd never become a son. Anyway, you know the sort of thing.
I feel like you've been looking at my notes. You just got points.
It's blowing the prosecution case wide open.
Although it's very disturbing to not hear the Gareth Bowley voice when a comment's being read out.
Oh, a voice like velvet, hasn't he?
Aye.
It's a man that should be narrating a Target audiobook. We'll get that sorted. Next up, Kieran Evans, another newbie. Hello, Kieran. Kieran says, "Not guilty." It's brilliant with great direction. It's your moral duty to watch.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
There you go.
Podcast.
Next up, Walter M, another newbie. Hello, Walter. Walter says, "It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I definitely thought it was my favourite season 7, with plenty of twists throughout and thoughts on who the true monster of the story is."
Yep.
Okay.
I think the true monster of the story is Liz Shaw's white boots, but that's just me.
You can only have thoughts about
Not the hat, though.
because we don't learn nothing.
Okay, getting towards the end of the evidence here, just a few more to go. So Simon is next, who says, Doctor Who, if ITC produced it, a great fun romp, but like most of season 7, it probably only needed 5 episodes.
Yep, absolutely.
If it's a great fun romp, how can you say you wanted less of it? It's a great fun romp. Therefore, you enjoyed it. You can't have less.
It's a complex argument, Dave.
It's only 2 sentences.
Next up, Oscar Groucho, who says, Victory of ideas over substance, a superb central premise stretched away for Finn over a plot that can never quite decide what genre it's wading into. Some of the most stirring iconography of the era, though.
That'll be the hat again.
To be fair, though, that is a lot of Doctor Who, right? It will sort of cross genres in a lot of stories, not just this one. Oh, wait, I'm on the prosecution.
Yes, Joe. Yes, you are.
Stop crossing the floor, Mr. Ford. All right, penultimate bit of your evidence tonight is from the one and only Lucy McCall, who says, not guilty. Strong performances throughout, atmospheric direction. Liz is great in her own part of the story. Pertwee is perfecting his Doctor as annoying but brilliant. And special mention for Ronald Allen, whose calm, humane performance makes Mission Control real. Also, Sergeant Benton was framed in this story's unfortunate death of Cyril Shaps.
Can we have just a very quick moment to talk about Lucy McCall's book coming out? Benton and Miss Hawthorne. Now, it's just so wonderful when lovely things happen to talented, lovely people. And she met John Levine at a convention, John Levine of this story, and they got talking, and he got her in touch with a publisher. There's a short story collection coming out later on in the year, I think, called Benton and Miss Hawthorne. And happy days. Everyone go and pre-order.
Yep.
Yes.
I'll stick a pre-order link in the show notes for this. So, sorry, Toby. Go ahead.
But yeah, Benton and Miss Hawthorne are, we're so pleased we got a Jago and Lightfoot spin-off. But Benton and Miss Hawthorne are a great double act. And I mean, if only Benton's surname had been Elderberry or something, they could have had an ITV detective spin-off. They could have been Elderberry and Hawthorne, private investigators. But they were scuppered by nomenclature. But and it is a lovely story, and John's very happy with the end. John left me a message the other day asking to mention it everywhere because he's very proud of it and pleased that it's happened.
Brilliant.
So yeah,
excellent. Well, definitely stick a pre-order.
He has to definitely be not guilty of murder in this story, all right, in order to be a hero in Lucy's book.
Yeah. Oh, and he's definitely not guilty of murder. I've looked into this. In the call sheets and stuff and I think on the shooting script, and if it's John Ebenary who kills Lennox, and he's wearing he's wearing a unit jacket to pass off as a cell guard, but it's General Carrington who kills Lennox, and it's John Ebenary putting on a voice. Yeah.
Although
Benton is guilt free.
As a sort of side prosecution note, that is a bit of a problem with these stories where the paranoia is everywhere and everyone's having the finger pointing at them. Who's involved in the conspiracy? Because that scene with John Levine, right, where he goes, "Oh, yes, sir, I'll be out." Suddenly he's behaving in a very suspicious way that he never does before or again in Doctor Who, but just because he's in a story where he could be a suspect. It's very odd. And it's kept us guessing and talking for the last 30 years as well, the way he played that scene.
Yeah.
Almost like it was well written and well directed to leave the viewer guessing. Thanks, Joe.
Or extremely unclear as to who the killer actually was.
Yep.
One or the other.
Okay, final bit of your evidence tonight. Let's finish on a positive note, shall we? Oh, no, hang on, wait, it's Paul Quinn. Paul Quinn says, bloody aliens coming down here. Don't even bother to learn the lingo. Brits have to go to the expense of translating their jabbering while they keep brave British astronauts prisoner. And that swarthy, bearded so-called scientist is no better. English accent 1 minute, then he's all Gino De Campo. That General Carrington's a hero if you ask me. Keep the foreigners out. He's the type of leader that had at Khartoum, as Landois, Gallipoli, the Somme and Singapore. He should have been running UNIT in the UK. I think he's standing for reform in Upper Dicker or Dunny on the Wold. Mind you, last week Lethbridge Stewart blew the shit out of some alien lizard scum, and they were natives in the first place. And in 8 weeks' time, he'll be some type of fascist. So maybe he was just like Carrington all along.
Wow.
He's priceless, isn't he?
Just
That's
wow.
the man that introduced me to Doctor Who. Good God.
Surprised you like it at all, Joe, if that was your grounding.
Jeez Louise.
Okay, that's the viewer evidence for tonight. Two little quick bits of business before we start the trial properly. You can get in touch with us and give us your thoughts on the Ambassadors of Death. All you have to do is send us a message using the live chat box on this very YouTube video you're watching right now. We'll put them up on screen as they come in. And also, voting is now open. So based on the arguments put forward by Dave, Cameron, Joe and Toby tonight, you get to decide whether the Ambassadors of Death is guilty or not guilty of crimes against Doctor Who. Cast your vote now. Go to tinyurl.com/postbox vote free, or click in the link in the description of this video you're watching right now. I'll take you to the poll. We will reveal the results of that at the end of tonight's show. Right then, let's get started. As usual, guests go first on the Post Box Live. So, Toby, do you want to give us your first point for the defence of the Ambassadors of Death, please?
Well, I mean, where does one start? But I think one starts with the thing that is most obvious, which is the direction of Michael Ferguson, who only directed 4 Doctor Who stories, none of which are sort of considered classics, and yet, or particular sort of 10 out of 10ers, but all of which I think stand out as being particularly well done in the direction department. And I think Ambassadors is probably his most impressive production. I think it's because, I mean, when I was, as I say, I had been led into this to be expecting something to be a bit sort of shambolic and shoddy. And, a Doctor Who story where there might be scripting problems, but it's superbly well mounted, is enough for me sometimes. Earthshock doesn't stand up to much scrutiny script wise, but actually it's such a polished and impressive production. It sticks out in that season as and I watched it at the time as something quite extraordinary. The way I was listening to Joe's podcast today about season 5 Hamster on the Web of Fear, where there were certain accusations that the Web of Fear is ridiculous. The Web of Fear is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Yeti, they're deciding to take over the world with web guns via the London Underground. It stands no scrutiny whatsoever, really, and yet it's such a well polished and brilliant production that I sort of don't care, because most Doctor Who stories, if you are of a mind to, you could boil down to having ridiculousness at their core. It's the bravura way that they are staged and performed. And I mean, I could have chosen the cast of this as well as part of my defense, and I will do should it not happen downriver, but I suspect it will. But all the decisions Ferguson makes on this lift what I think is a really interesting conspiracy theory kind of story with a different kind of vibe to it. And there's all sorts to be said about what Malcolm Hulke brings to Doctor Who in terms of villains with shades of grey and not obvious endings and not playing the Doctor Who formula. But I think Ferguson is absolutely a perfect fit for season 7. I think there's an argument actually that in the same way that missing episodes are kind of make us love the show more because of what we could have and that yearning. I've got love for things I've never been allowed to have more than things I've had very often. And I could say the same about some people. But there's something about I think if all of the Pertwee had been like season 7, I suspect season 7 wouldn't be as special as it is. I kind of like that it's this weird, anomalous, 3 consecutive 7-parters that are all, I mean, comparatively, when we say gritty in terms of Doctor Who, with it's a certain kind of gritty. It's not, it's not Law and Order, is it? It still has a certain amount of pizzazz to it, but it's as gritty as Doctor Who gets, and Michael Ferguson's a great fit for this. That unit warehouse battle is excellent. Then we have the set piece with the hijack by hairdryer in episode 2, and I think things like the raid on the base, that beautiful Tony Lego and A.A. Englander. Appropriate for a story about a little Englander. We've got a giant of an Englander behind the film camera. doing that, and I love that that scene where Max Faulkner gets zapped via the barrier, and the ambassador is in silhouette, and again the monsters are kind of Doctor Who sometimes for me is at its best when it takes. It knows that actually you could take something as simple as a kid with a gas mask or a man in an astronaut suit and make it really terrifying and exciting, and I think the actors move very nicely and they loom, and then the scene where you do get to see one, he does those brilliant juddering cuts that he does where the camera moves in and it cuts and it's slightly wobble, and it just makes everything slightly untouchable, slightly unreasonable. For a story that's got so much hardware and action on show, it does have a slight weirdness to it, and I think it's probably been helped by the fact that we don't have a perfect copy of it. And again, I wonder if it might not be as effective if it was as sort of polished as the day it was born. But something about the fact that we've always watched it through this sort of gauze or this haze or this, just having to slightly imagine what it is supposed to be looking like. I think that slight unreachability, the fact that it's not quite, we don't quite know it. I've watched it loads, but I'm always slightly surprised by it, even though I think it's a story I've probably watched a lot more than other stories that feel more familiar to me. And I think that helps with the fact that, yeah, it is a twisty turny action adventure, but it's also got that slight strange sort of dissonant weirdness that I associate more with the 60s than with anything that came beyond it. And I think that carves it out as being a bit, having something that the rest of season 7 doesn't have. And I love all of season 7, but Ferguson, he does those brilliant the quick vision mixing when the noise comes through and everyone's got their hands on their ears except the Doctor, because he's cool and he doesn't flinch at alien noise, and those the sort of tracking in and the quick cuts that lead to that brilliant cliffhanger that shouldn't be a brilliant cliffhanger at all. I remember when I first saw it, and I knew what most of the cliffhangers were going to be because I'd read Doctor Who magazine, which had Doctor Who Weekly always had the cliffhanger as part of the episode guide, but that one hadn't sunk in for whatever reason. I knew Liz was going to fall off a weir later and that sort of thing, and I couldn't remember what episode. So when I was watching it and getting really invested in the adventure, and suddenly it's just, right, cut it open. And you go, that's not a Doctor Who cliffhanger. And yet it's one of the greatest Doctor Who cliffhangers of all time. In fact, I think the cliffhanger to episode 0 is wonderful. That introduction, the pre-credits, if you like, where, Van Leyden says something took off from Mars. And then the genius, never repeated. And maybe we would have got used to it, so it wouldn't be so special. Can you imagine the leisure hive or whatever? It wouldn't have been quite the same. But the ambassador's,
all the help it can get.
The ambassador's kapow of death, I just think is a wonderful way of doing it. And another thing that makes this story slightly weird and special and unlike anything else. And he does those brilliant, he's got such wonderful set pieces. Yes, it is quite long and it is quite drawn out, but what he does with the bits that you could cut out is he makes you not want to, because he'll dispose of a couple of bodies by having Regan rather coolly hide them under gravel in a working quarry, and so many of the stunts are just sort of effortlessly thrown into it. I love the bit at the end just before they capture Regan, where they just kick the door in and the heavy runs up the door and they shoot him and he falls backwards down the stairs, and it's done in studio in kind of real time. It's not sort of set up. It's not a special set piece. It's not oh look, we're gonna have a stunt on film now. It's just, bloody hell, he's just fallen backwards down the stairs. And I think Ferguson doesn't leave anything to chance. He's such a meticulous director that draws every ounce of not just action. There are some action directors. Ferguson's a great action director, but I also think he's good at the menace and at the nuance, and his picture composition is beautiful. So I think Michael Ferguson, it's one of the great Doctor Who directors. I think this is his finest production, and I don't think he puts a foot wrong with action, with character scenes, with menace, with a feeling of paranoia, and with keeping the pace up and the mystery up all the way through. So Michael Ferguson is exhibit number 1. Is that what I was supposed to do? But
yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I can't argue the point that it's exemplary direction, but maybe it's a little too good. Maybe there is a reason why. Wait, there will be a second. There's a reason why this story goes up to 9 million in episode 3 and then plummets to 5 million and doesn't recover for the rest of the season is because he's been handed this incredibly serious script, far more serious than Doctor Who normally is. In and out of warehouses, in and out of space bases, in and out of quarries. Is this really going to keep people interested for 7 weeks? I think people started to get a bit bored, no matter how good it looked. And it does look great. I don't know. I think he gets the tone right, but I don't think the tone was a good idea. I think had this been the tone of Doctor Who throughout the Pertwee era is where we would have lost Doctor Who. Very possibly. The transition next year is absolutely needed to push away from all of this.
I absolutely think there's a case to be made for that, in the same way that I love the historicals, but they also probably needed to go. But I love the fact that they exist, and I don't think it's an unfair observation to say that you needed the sort of injection of tartrazine that Barry Letts and Terence Dicks bring to Doctor Who to make it cozier. But because I've spent my whole life not wanting Doctor Who to be a children's program, even when I was 8, there's part of me that embraces it when it tries to follow that mantra. Although, of course, the last thing Doctor Who should be is we can have conversations about earnestness in later sort of manifestations of Doctor Who, but I don't think season 7 is earnest. There's still lots of wit on show. Pert was a naturally good comic performer, and there's
it's
some lovely
tone, though, isn't it? It's of a tone. It's in and out of industrial bases. There's not a huge amount of variety in 7, and so you can sort of see why this would slip into the pack, because it is doing a lot of what Inferno's doing: action set pieces, dynamic action, 7 parts, lots of scientific conversations. It's doing a lot of what the Silurians is doing as well. It's doing it very well. It's doing it in a very well executed way. But I don't know. Have we lost the variety a bit?
Yeah, but that's not its fault.
Yeah. To an extent, it's just a base under siege story. It's just the base in question is Earth.
It is.
The astronauts can't get off.
Inferno and the Silurians are the ones that are remembered, and the Ambassadors of Death is the one that's forgotten.
That's because democracy is an inherently flawed concept.
There's a lot of season 7 rewatching it back that can be surmised as scientific project goes tits up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is like the middle of 3 stories, which pretty much have that as a premise.
Well, science was only invented in 1970.
Of course, it was a fresh thing.
Yeah.
If we're talking about realism of Doctor Who and how these stories are, realistic, of real world, when is this story set?
This story about a time traveling alien with 2 hearts and the real world.
Story, when does this story take place?
Somewhere around the 70s or
tea time. I don't care. Why does it matter?
Yeah.
This is a can of worms being opened here.
The 1970s, when we've gone to Mars and space travel is a relatively easy concept. When did that happen?
It's not that easy. It takes an episode.
Yeah.
That whole thing of lying down like that.
Six in the space bar,
now. So, yeah, I just I couldn't quite put my finger on when this is supposed to be. Because at no point does anyone say, oh, it's an alternative universe. Fine.
It's not. What you mean is this a timeless story?
I think that was sort of the go-to. It's the near future.
Yeah,
and the beauty of Doctor Who is I always say that Doctor Who doesn't travel in time; he travels in genre. And you can, the whole beautiful thing about the show, because it has different textures and feelings and tastes, is that I don't think in the real world universe anybody who's got a big garden and likes plants has machine gun wielding guards. But I love the Seeds of Doom.
Titchmarsh does.
And in that particular world of the Seeds of Doom, you can have a vertiginous tycoon who happens to employ a private security firm who are armed. It's watching Ambassadors of Death. I've never been sort of I wish they'd nailed down exactly when this was.
But it's not. It's not so much that. It's more like it's more the fact that it's at odds. It's like this 1970s, England, in which we've been to Mars. It's not an alternative universe. It can't be forwards in time because the TARDIS is knackered and can't go anywhere. So where did this come from? I would understand it.
Fiction, Cam. You know, it's not a documentary.
Yeah, I know, but yeah.
Sorry, I'm on the prosecution.
It can't. It's either going to have to be rooted in realism, or it can be this wonderful flight of fancy, and it tries to do both, and it can't be both in this instance. Because, as I say, the TARDIS is knackered. You can't do the whole traveling in time thing. If that was the case, then fine, not a problem at all.
But you could say that about any doctor. You know, every time somebody says, aliens, are you mad? You go, there's been loads of
that would be fine.
invasions.
That would be absolutely fine, because that's part of that particular story, and aliens feature in that story. Aliens feature in this story. I'm not complaining about the alien side of it. I am complaining that it seems to want to depict a realistic 1970s Britain in which we seem to have mastered Mars travel. And travel to Mars, and then that seems to be a relatively thing that people just don't bat an eyelid about. It's not, when he visited Mars, that thing, and then he met them. Oh, there we go. And that's it. And I just can't quite equate the two.
I can see Cam's point to an extent, because yes, the general was on a Mars mission as well. And if it wasn't a Mars mission, he's now a general. That must be like 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's now this reality where Britain went to Mars in the 1950s.
Yes.
Has Doctor Who? Oh God, I'm on the prosecution. Has Doctor
Who
has it ever pretended to be in our world? Like,
no,
it didn't happen 15 years ago.
Yeah, but as Cam says, it's meant to be similar to our world.
I don't think it would have been that long ago, because all astronauts tend to be high-ranking military types anyway, don't they?
Usually colonels, roughly.
Yeah,
Lieutenant Colonel.
Yeah, perhaps he was at the last legs of his coloneldom, and he went into space, and they came back and went, right, you're a general now.
I would get it.
And the fact that they're traveling in space is the least of this plot's problems.
So
there are many more problems than this.
If it was the moon, fine, not a problem at all. We've done that in real life, grand. It's the fact that suddenly Mars gets chucked in there, and it's like, well, what period of time did this happen in? Is this some sort of weird Watchmen style alternative take on 1970s?
It was probably a story writing choice, because we know there's nothing on the moon, so they kind of, because we'd been there.
From a massive yoke.
Yeah, obviously there's a dragon inside it. We all know that.
Yeah,
it's a scientific fact. That
yeah, and all those spidery crab things, but they had to use somewhere. And Mars, because of things like War of the Worlds, was the next choice. So as kids in the 70s, must be a Mars mission. That's fine. It's acceptable that men went to Mars. And yeah, they don't nail down the time, because if you're a kid watching this, or a teen or a young adult or whatever watching this, you go, yeah, this could be 5-10 years in the future, because you still believe that the world is going to get better.
But isn't it a romantic vision of the future, where Britain has its own space program, and we're out into the stars. Oh God, I'm on the prosecution.
So how did they get there then in this Britain of 5 to 10 years ahead, where we've got our own space program?
Well, use your imagination.
If no TARDIS,
rockets and money. Yeah, but the Doctor has been stuck here for a while, and he's been giving units scientific
5 to 10 years, obviously.
And if he's just dropping out scientific equations and formulas for new fuels, they could advance really quickly.
You know why we're talking about all this minutiae is because we can't really poke at any holes in his airtight argument about the direction, which is superb.
I can hear most of what was going on. All the straw clutching. It's quite noisy. It's like rustling.
I'll try and clutch less straws then. I've got a few issues with the plot, right? Which is very complicated. So in order to embarrass the ambassadors or to spread propaganda about them, here's the plan. We're going to send a second rocket up into space, and then we're going to exchange the people in that rocket for ambassadors. We're then going to bring them back down, steal that shuttle, and then remove those ambassadors and then threaten them, with radiation or whatever it is they do in that room. So they do what they're told, and then we're going to have them go out on a series of sort of terrorist raids. Then we're going to set up a press.
No, that's not the terrorist raids are the baddies manipulating the situation to their own ends. The ambassador's plan is to speak to everybody, but they get kidnapped, and then they get used for ulterior purposes. That's not the ambassador's plan. Is just to get in the thing and come and have a chat to us.
Carrington want the ambassadors. What does he want them for?
But Carrington wants to show, because Carrington is so paranoid that he perverts the situation in order to show the ambassadors that are deadly, because he thinks they're killers because they accidentally killed his friend Jim. And that's a lovely scene where he explains what happens, and he says Jim Daniels, fellow astronaut. So he's sort of manipulating the truth a little bit in order to show what he thinks is the truth, is that they're deadly and that they're killers, and that will alert the world.
How is he going to expose that?
Well, on television.
What, just show the aliens and say they're here and they're deadly.
Look, they're touching you and they kill you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that's why he's doing it. Fine. So that is such a ridiculously complicated way of getting to that point at the end, when he could have just sent up that shuttle with the astronauts on it, blew it up, and said the ambassadors did it, and he would have exactly the same result without all of that. Because it means that the goodies in this story have to be so stupid that they have to lose the rocket, that they have to lose the ambassadors, that they have to lose characters. And I don't know, it's just so ridiculously overcomplicated, where there are about 15 other far more simple ways you could point the fingers at the ambassadors.
Imagine a convoluted plot in Doctor Who, Joe. Imagine such a thing.
The only reason it's as complicated is that it has to fill 7 episodes. But when you start to unpick it, you're like, yeah, this is ridiculously overcomplicated.
But is it overcomplicated because it needs to fill 7 episodes?
Yes.
Or does it need 7 episodes because it's such a complex, interesting story with changes? You slowly learn more about different factions.
You can
and it shows you
literally
different
lop
sides.
off 3 episodes of this with all the swaps going on. The rocket's here, the rocket's there. Liz is here, Liz is there. The ambassadors are here, the ambassadors are there.
If Carrington had blown up the stuff in space, that wouldn't have galvanized the British government and public to send missiles to Mars. That's what he wants to do. He wants to do a preemptive strike because he doesn't want to make
a British rocket wouldn't galvanize the British.
An explosion of a British rocket that couldn't necessarily be explained.
With planted evidence that it was the ambassadors all along. It's much more simple.
But it's not necessarily believable. Yeah, you could.
Well, neither's all of this.
You could cut out loads of bits of this story and make it 10 minutes long.
Stealing shuttles. None of this is believable at all. It relies on our heroes being stupid, this plot, and allowing the bad guys to continually sneak things away from them under their nose.
Yeah, but the bad guys are working in collusion with the government or certain factions of the military. So then they're not stupid. The odds are against them because the threat comes from within.
Which factions?
I
ask. And Sir James Quinlan. Well, what's his motive?
He wanted the glory of being the first to make contact with an intelligent alien species.
Yeah,
that's a direct quote.
With Carrington against them.
Well, it's because Carrington's working against Quinlan.
This sounds very confusing to me. I don't think it's very clear in the story.
The great philosopher Ben Wirth has a thing about Doctor Who episodes, but it effectively just descends into he's a spy, he's a spy, he's a spy. This is patient zero of that. Because every single character in this ends up flipping over sides, and it wants to be this in-depth spy drama, but in the end, it's just this. It becomes almost farcical towards the end. How many people are basically like, actually, he's working for the other side. Oh, is he? Oh, yes. And it's just like, oh, yeah, he's all in charge of the whole thing. If Carrington is in charge of the whole thing and is actually working against the government, and Regan is working for him, why is it that twice Regan has to disguise himself to get into the base, to sabotage it, and then sneak back out again? If his boss is in charge of that as well, surely he could have just walked on in.
But it's
Well, no, because that would have
deniability.
because if he turned up and said, "Hello, my name's Mr. Regan. I work for General Carrington," and then if the base was sabotaged, they'd have gone, "Who do you think sabotaged?" I think it's probably that bloke who said he said he worked for General Carrington.
That bloke in the milk float.
Yeah. And Carrington's there going, and I'm lactose intolerant, so it's nothing to do with me. But I think that, and I think the clever thing with Carrington is he's originally revealed to be the man behind it, but then the revelation is, okay, no, they were doing this for a reason, because the astronauts are irradiated. So he's doing a sneaky thing because our goodies aren't supposed to know that stuff. So then the thing is, so the guy that we thought was a baddie is actually a goodie. And then it actually turns out that no, he's a baddie. So there's a double twist there, but it works within the logic of the plot. And he needs to have Quinlan on his side, because the beautiful thing is he's not fully in charge, so he can't just call the shots, otherwise there'd be no plot. He has to manipulate from his end, so he has to manipulate Sir James Quinlan to do his side of things, and then when Quinlan sort of folds under the pressure, he has to nobble him off, and that's when he has to become more reliant on Regan, who'd originally been his sort of heavy. So I think it all works. It's not just it's not like Invasion of the Dinosaurs, when if that had gone on any longer, I think the cup of tea would have gone. And I've actually always wanted a golden age myself, But I think the villainy is actually all pretty well placed in this and develops for reasons. It doesn't strike me as a quick rewrite as it might do in other circumstances.
What is it that snapped Carrington? So it's the fact that the other astronaut was killed when they
killed Jim Daniels, fellow astronaut. Yes, he says
and this snapped Carrington's mind, and he's now mad.
Well, I think he's insane. Yes. Love that delivery of that line.
But very charming and calm, and until the cameras are on him.
Yeah, because fucking lunatics aren't going to get in a position of power, are they?
Well, you say that,
some
Toby.
warmongering psychopath calling the shots in plain sight and nobody being able to do anything about it.
My point is that you have 3.5 hours to examine General Carrington in this story, and he saw his mate get killed does not cut it for everything that he does throughout this story.
He could also have been
if this was being made now in 45 minutes, he would have a better backstory. We would know his relationships with those people. It would all be explored in a lot more detail. But instead, it just feels like a limp excuse for the ridiculous grand scheme that he's done. And, he's murdered people. He's corrupted people. He's pulled in criminals. He's not a good guy.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. He's emblematic of those people who think it's their moral duty to do terrible, and people do terrible things if they think.
Why do we give him a pass at the end then?
Because the Doctor is not vengeful, and you don't gain anything by becoming the thing that you despise, and the Doctor shows compassion. And it's beautiful.
Why with Carrington, but why not with someone like Davros? Would the Doctor go up to Hitler and go, I understand it was your moral duty that you murdered those people and corrupted those people.
Depends who's writing it.
Take a whole race of people and turn everybody against them. I don't think he does.
I think he understands where Carrington comes from and pities him. And Carrington's already defeated. So what's he supposed to do when Carrington goes, I did understand, go, yeah, but it's episode 7 and shoot him in the face.
That's the Eric say.
I say, could anyone blow this general up, please?
Like it's a lovely moment at the end of the story.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, he's been a fucking bastard. Like, why are we giving him a pass?
Yeah, but if you think about it, a space journey to Mars is going to be quite a long, slow thing. It's going to take a while to travel there. And if you've traveled all the way there with a close colleague of yours, and who knows how close they were, and then that colleague dies, and you have to have the whole journey back, possibly traveling with the corpse of your best friend who was killed by Martians, you might get a bit bitter and twisted. You come
I
back to
wonder then,
Heroes
Dave, if they would allow him into the position of power that he is in if he had been through that situation.
as
Oh,
long as
that's fine. You know, you take
Every
control of
single
all of this.
high-ranking military officer post-war will have been through terrible, terrible situations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
irresponsible of them. Then.
Also, I think, Dave, you have conjured something there that is a big absence in the whole Doctor Who landscape, which is General Carrington and Jim Daniels' space set / fiction, which
Yes.
I think
I'm
should
on
be
it.
a whole
I'm on
new
it.
subgenre.
Coming soon to Big Finish Productions.
I'm hoping that he had freckles so that he could get the nickname of Speckly Jim, just to get the Blackadder fans on board.
Speckle Jim.
With that image in our minds, we've had comments coming in while that's been going on. Some good questions being raised here, chiefly amongst them was this. Gareth Bowley, wonder what a Muppets version of Ambassadors of Death would look like. Would the hat be a character in itself?
Oh, yes.
Well, Miss
Absolutely
Piggy is
not.
obviously going to be Liz. Because
Yes, definitely.
it's pretty much the only main female character in it, so that's written in.
I mean, it's
Definitely.
a fabulous hat,
Who's-
right? I won't deny that it's a fabulous hat. But honest to God, she's supposed to be like a serious scientific advisor. You just wouldn't wear the bloody thing, would you?
She does have time in this story to have about 3 wardrobe changes, though.
She does. Yeah.
Suddenly,
In fact,
the next scene's
she's
like,
behind
we've
the-
ran away from infinite danger. Oh, but I've got to change into this.
She's
Well,
a
I'm
story
behind
scientist
I
about
think
town,
Daisy
she has
Ashford
to.
says, I think she packed heavy for this excursion.
Christ.
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't think her outfits are particularly heavy to carry. Like, they don't take up
No.
much space.
That's very true.
Also in touch, Michael Storm says, rather of missing me, but I wasn't until watching the behind the sofa feature on the Blu-ray that I twigged that Carrington was the same actor as Rimmer's dad in Red Dwarf.
And Herne the Hunter in Robin of Sherwood, and the butler in the Ambassador's Reception Ferrero Rocher advert. And
Wow.
and he's a regular in the last series of Survivors as well.
It was amazingly good in an episode of Who Done It I saw last week as well.
He's a ledge. He's a ledge.
Is he the one that says, Rimmer, you're a total smeghead?
Total, yes.
I love that bit.
Fraser Gregory's also been in touch tonight. He's
Oh,
offered up a couple of points. Here we go, Joe. He says every episode of Doctor Who could be resolved by the Doctor doing in the first episode what he does in the last one.
Yep.
Well, yes.
Also goes on to say, if I hadn't sat through every episode with him, I'd be seriously questioning if Joe has seen this story at this point.
He not only did that, he did a bloody 5-hour commentary on it with me as well and told me every reason he loves it.
Oh, God.
Oh, no. God. Things I'll do.
Talking of things to love in this story, let's see what Dave loves in this story. Dave, let's give you a first point for the defence.
It's a small one, my first one, because,
Okay.
start small. And it's something that Toby touched on earlier. It's the title of this, The Ambassadors of Death. and that's how it is in my head now for the rest of my life. It's got that different thing to it. And it's such a nice sign that they were willing and wanted to try different things for this series. They went, let's do it different. They never did it again, which is a shame. It would have worked for some stuff. But people hate it. And I think that sums up the problem with some of Doctor Who. People don't like change. People don't like things to be different. But this series, much of this series, they went, fuck it, 3 7-parters in a row. Fuck it, different kind of title. Ambassadors of Death. We'll even put a sound effect in there. And it's just so nice that we don't get many series of Doctor Who where they're willing to try new things. And every different story is slightly different in this. They've tried different things in them all. The modern equivalent of this might even be Flux, because they tried different things and the fans said, no, it's wrong and I hate it. Why do you hate it? Because it's different. And that's... Doctor Who wouldn't have survived this long if they weren't willing to do different things and try different things. And the problem is the fandom hates
the title itself,
whenever
Dave,
it's
or
different.
the title card.
Both.
Because the title, the something of something, they've been doing for years.
Yes, but the way they did it. Because it comes up on
Spades,
screen,
obviously.
the ambassadors, and then there's a gap, and it's of death. Because normally the title comes up and it's the whole title, but this is like title, subtitle, and it's just it sticks in your head. Because normally you're like, okay, watching Classic Who, yep, that's the title on screen. Oh, that's a bit different, and it draws you in. And it's a very, very small thing, but it shows that they're putting thought into almost everything they do at this point to try and make it different, try and make it more enticing. And yeah, not all of it works. Do we need 3 7-parts in a row? Not necessarily. Do they work?
No.
In this instance, I'd argue yes.
No.
But yeah, the different title and the way they actually display it differently is a nice touch, and it shows that it's different people doing it. So that's the first point I've got.
I can't believe we've mentioned Ferrero Rocher already this evening, because you could have had the ambassador's reception.
Yes. But that's
Harrington, you know, when he does his new broadcast, he could have had the Ambassadors of Death as his title card, couldn't he?
He could have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is catching on in the comments as well, because we now got the keys of Marinus.
There we go.
And I think it's never done again.
Yeah.
What would be the most boring?
Why
one?
it was never
The
done again.
wheel in space. Actually, no, that's pretty good.
How about time of the Rani?
Yes.
Add some drama.
And I don't know if there's ever an explanation given for why they only did it once and never used it
Because
again.
it was garbage and didn't work.
But why didn't it work?
So they
It's
binned
memorable and different.
It's. Did you know about it before you started watching this again?
No.
Exactly.
It's well
Pointless.
sexy.
There you go.
But they only did it once, so I hadn't watched this, so I didn't know about it. Like, I don't know what your point is.
But you're
I mean,
saying
that's
like,
the
kind
only
of going,
point
oh
the
yeah, it's different, it's
company
great.
made.
It's so different. They binned it after one story.
Yeah, it's that they
And
didn't.
you didn't even remember it until you revisited this one.
But I
So
don't
perhaps-
get why they binned it is the point, because it is
Perhaps they
different.
didn't consider it a success. Whether it's a success or not, that's the
Oh,
creators did.
Or they didn't consider it repeatable because it wouldn't necessarily have sustained itself. Or that doesn't mean it doesn't work the one time that they use it. You know, it just means it wouldn't, it couldn't be continued, and that's fine. It can still be good in its own terms.
But maintain its impact.
You know, its success isn't indicated by whether they continue to use it or not. And you certainly couldn't have had Infer. No.
No, just no. That's 2 weeks time. No,
They did do something
Infer,
different,
no.
though, didn't they? They had all of the the lava
Yeah.
splashing everywhere. So they
Yeah.
it's after
and,
that. they stopped
and
doing
then following that, you know, Barry Letts goes, I think it's probably sensible if we just have a uniform way of doing it, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing. But that doesn't take away from the fact that when the Ambassadors of Death does it, it's brilliant. You know,
Yeah. And it is a sign that
There's
they're
a-
trying different things.
Viewers comment at 12 minutes past 9 from David. If we might be worth.
I've
putting that
got
one
that
on the
mark to
screen.
bring up, so I'll bring that up now.
Cool.
David says, what did the panel think of the Doctor's transmigration of matter trick? To me, it's a piece of authorial hand-waving that would make even RTD blush.
well, I hate it. It's a it's a sad thing for me that when I fell in love with the Ambassadors of Death, you know, and dreamed of showing it to everybody to prove how brilliant Doctor Who was, because that's how I spent my childhood. I was on a mission to convert everybody. The two bits that made me go, oh, I'd have to hope people weren't paying attention for that bit, is transmigration of objects, and the bit that I find less offensive now, which is Bess's magical powers of gluing two people to her for a short amount of time, which I also think is kind of, we've never watched Doctor Who before, we need to get out of this, let's throw a thing in. And that those are both, to me, signs of what the production team would have told you is wrong with the story, of nobody's quite got enough time or energy or inclination to pick up on bits that with a little bit more time or a little bit more of a consistency in the office, you'd go, oh, we need to iron those couple of things out, because that's not what we do or how we do things. And yeah, transmigration of object is a very, very naughty moment that I kind of would like to pretend had never happened. But there's not a Doctor Who story that doesn't have a bit that I go, I wish that hadn't happened.
Is
It would
transmigration
probably-
of objects any more crazy than aliens from space?
Yes.
Why?
It's magic. whereas aliens from space are scientific. So long as it pretends to be scientific. If at least it's sort of going, we have an aspiration to exist within the realms of possibility. Now, this is maybe self-loathing on my part, because but if you rewire something and reverse the polarity, I'm there. If you conjure the spirit of ISIS, you can fuck off. For me, it has to have some grounding in the plausible, which I know is hugely compromised in terms of all sorts of consistency and likelihood, and but once as this story tells us, our entire worldview and morality is actually shaped by what we like and don't, and we twist and turn in order to make them seem virtuous.
It's funny, when I was building my argument for this story, well, I say argument, when I was building my case, and I mentioned all the things to my other half, and he went, "Oh, those two bits with the magic, the sticky car and the transmite, they're the only two bits I like in that story." Because they're the two bits that are fun.
Yeah, well, you can have too much fun, Joe.
I mean, it's not very fun watching men being dragged out of cars and shoved into slurry, is it, in a quarry?
That's how you get your kicks, Joe.
Oh, no, I'm saying it's not. Like magic tricks.
I think the whole magic trick disappearing disc would have worked had it somehow been baked into the ending somehow. That would have been fine, because it would have been introduced early doors and there would have been a payoff for it. There would have been a reason why the Doctor introduces this thing to Liz and mentions it at the start. As is, it's just something stupid at the start, which is introduced in a couple of seconds as if it's an afterthought. It's then used to kind of dance the disc in front of Tatalian's face in, I think, episode 2 or 3, isn't it? And then never mentioned again. That's it, gone. And
is it ever mentioned again in any of Doctor Who? At all?
Well, we're not talking about any other Doctor Who, are we, Dave?
No, I know.
We're just talking about this Doctor Who.
He does pick up powers and drops them with alarming frequency. That thing that McCoy does with his finger.
Yep. Dem spoons, man. Dem spoons.
I'll be in character here.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm with the person.
What he does in conventions is up to him. In the privacy of his own hotel room.
Can we talk about Reagan, please? Who's a very suave and charming thug, isn't he? Lovely. I don't know anything about him at all. I know nothing about him at all from this story. I really know nothing about his background, nothing really about his life. I know he wants to rob Fort Knox, which is the dullest motive that a henchman could possibly
and again
have.
Just mentioned on a whim, just like going, oh yeah, Fort Knox, because that's
I also know he has an alarming amount of skills, that he seems to have picked up. He can do pretty much anything the plot requires of him at any point. But I find him a bit one note. I think the performance is great, but I find the character a bit lacking in substance.
Get out of town. He's fantastic. He is better than we've got any right to expect.
Tell me what you know about him.
He's suave. He's sexy.
No.
He capers nimbly around.
It's easy to list off his many personality traits throughout this story. What do we know about him? We spend 5 episodes with this guy. I know nothing about him.
Joe, you strike me as somebody who you don't have to know anything about anybody. And sometimes that's part of the fun, I'm sure. Now, listen.
You're pulling a gun at me any day.
William Dysart, I think, gives one of the great... I mean, in a story that's got a great cast and already a great primary villain in General Carrington, the fact that Regan then saunters in, kills his flunkies in a really rather stark way, and then spends the whole thing being like when he tells the Doctor to make a list, and the way that he is with Liz, where he's pretty brutal, and then the fact that when they come in and shoot the gun from his hand, and he goes, "Make yourself at home." He's sexy, and then he comes up with because he's the ultimate survivor. He comes up with the idea to help them in the end and says, "You won't forget I thought of that." I love that. He's unlike any other villain of his kind ever in the whole of Doctor Who, and I love him for it. And he's brilliant.
What do we know about him?
What? I don't give a shit.
We know that he's good and he's
I know that
ruthless.
he's fab.
Fort Knox. I want to know who that bloke is. He's sexy as hell. He's charming. Yes. He's capable. Yes. Would that fly on TV today? No.
Oh no, he'd probably have to have a sad backstory, and we'd have to feel sorry for him because his mother was eaten by Fort Knox when she was a woman in the olden days. It was really hard to be a woman, and oh fucking hell.
You know, he loved you just one man, yeah.
He does have the air of a man who should be managed by Don Revie at Leeds United. You know, that's what I was getting from him throughout this entire story. You know, he should be in midfield with Billy Bremner.
But I think my point is I get that these characters are all well performed. I get that I kind of get what they're doing throughout the story. It gets a bit confusing in the middle episodes. But I don't really feel like I know any of them. In the way that I have time with the characters in the Silurians, and I do get them. And I have time with the characters in Inferno, and I understand who they are. And I have time with the characters in Invasion of Dinosaurs, and I get who they are. These are kind of surface characters with limp motives.
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed it is.
No.
Can you feel we're going to differ on this one? Almost like that's the format.
I don't want.
I'm still waiting for the list to sort of sketch in these characters for me, because I don't know who these people are.
Michael Storm in the comments is on 9:22, Lee. If we could put
9:22, and Michael Storm says, "It amuses me that when Ambassadors was released on VHS, it was one of 2 releases to get the equivalent of a 15 certificate in Australia."
Okay, my 2 questions, therefore, are: what was the other one?
Yep. And
do we know why it got a 15 certificate in Australia? Is Michael actually Australian? Is this why he knows this?
I have a dim and distant memory of Ferguson likes to shoot down the barrel of a gun, and I'm not sure that that's something that was verboten in some way, shape, or form. And I don't know if that was Australia or thing, but I know that was a thing. But that might have just been be something that my memory may be cheating, or I may have dreamt it, or I may be lying for attention. It's not the latter. But I'm going to throw that into the mix as a possibility because it's lurking in my synapses somewhere.
Yeah.
Could it be the length of Liz Shaw's skirt?
I was going to say he likes shooting down a barrel of a gun and shooting up Liz Shaw's skirt at one point.
There is a point in the behind the sofa where David Ashford says they should have shot that a bit higher, actually. When looking
is
at
this a bit where the doctor's recovering on the floor of the little prison bit they've got for the ambassadors?
That's a bit, yes.
And that's the one. Yes. I was thinking that. Yeah, seems to recognise her quite quickly. Don't know why.
Michael, if you can enlighten us, then please do so.
I suspect the other one would have been Talons, wouldn't it?
I wanted Talons as well. Yeah. It was 12, didn't it, over here? Well, no, with PG. It was a PG, wasn't it, the VHS?
Was it?
And everything, a lot of them were used.
We'll find out. Go.
That's something for the half break. As it should be called, the Talons of Wen Chang.
The Talons of Wang. Cheyenne.
Well, talking about it, John, every single episode of the Postbox series, something gets mentioned that fires the imagination of the viewers. This whole thing about the ambassadors, Twang of Death, is really taking off in the comments because we've got the horns, Twang of Naimon.
Oh, wonderful.
The rain, Twang of Terror. Nightmare, Twang and Silver.
Oh, bugger.
And then we get into the good stuff. We've got the Trial of a Twang Lord. Paradise Twangers.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
The Twang Dilemma.
Well, yes.
And last but not least, and this is something that's definitely going to get a 12 certificate in Australia, the Big Twang Bang.
Wow.
Gareth Bowler is a very naughty man.
Coming soon to
Michael
collection box near you.
Michael's provided answers at 9:27.
Oh, right, okay, 9:27. He says, no, I am not Australian. The other story was Attack of the Cybermen.
Oh,
you
bloody
think,
Attack of the
man?
Cybermen.
And also, I believe it was the sequence
Oh.
of burying the bodies in the quarry that caused the issue.
Oh,
There we go.
okay.
There we
Okay.
go.
Wow.
He's
Mystery
very
solved.
useful at that. Yeah.
It's brutal.
Right, let's crack on to the next point for the prosecution before we go for our little half-time break. So that's Cam. Do you want to give us your first point for the prosecution, please?
Jeez, what have we not gone through so far? There's been a lot. I have mentioned. Oh, we've burnt through a hell of a lot in there.
Yep.
I've kept a couple back for round 2. You know.
Yes. Can we talk about how this story wants to portray, like, nuclear power and radiation as this highly dangerous thing, and how we're giving them more radiation that could possibly kill them. Oh dear God, is the same story in which isotopes are stored in a wooden box out in the open, and we have a guy who just seems to come in off the street in his street clothes and just open the big lead door that's through there, just hold it open for them as they walk on through. I just find it a weird juxtaposition of, oh yeah, it's terrible, yeah, there's a radiation, yeah, it's oh God, it'll kill them. And then it's just like, yeah, we'll just store it in a crate. It's fine, no problem at all. It does kind of undermine the message that they're trying to put across.
Well, no, because they only kill their radiation only kills when they touch you. So they're stored in the radiation box and have the isotopes in there because then they suck out all the radiation from the isotopes. So you've got to keep them in a strong room. But then once they've drunk their isotopes, when they open the door, it's fine.
Had their morning isotope.
Yes, exactly.
Along with their bacon
and your copy of the
sausages and
Times. Yes.
Oh yes, few star jumps.
Yeah.
Drinking some uranium. Yes. Okay. Isotopes in a slight upgrade from a cardboard box. A wooden crate. I give you.
Yeah. Well, but to be fair, Doctor Who does a lot of that, doesn't it? Where we'll have deadly things that are kept behind a lock.
Literally having isotopes written across it.
Yeah.
Was the bit that made me fucking howl with laughter. It's just that, it wants to be this deadly serious spy thriller, and then stuff like this just drags it down again. And it's just, there are parts of this which just, give the game away, really, to be honest with you.
Well, yes, and I get it's different with radioactive isotopes, but you can buy the most random shit online these days. You can literally...
Like uranium?
You can buy the chemical ingredients for thermite online, which is like military-grade high explosives. You can literally buy the ingredients on Amazon.
You should not be saying that live on YouTube, Dave, all right?
You can look up one of the ingredients and it actually says to you at the bottom, frequently bought together, and it's all 3 of the main ingredients.
Oh, Christ.
And they will deliver them to your house the next fucking day.
Well, Dave, next bonfire night.
Yes. But
do they all come in a wooden box, Dave?
No, they probably come in a shitty paper envelope for the good of the planet. But
dumped outside to be rained on.
Yeah. So I can see that in the 70s when they were a bit less relaxed, it's health and safety. Who gives a fuck? Put it in that box, that'll do. But what if somebody gets it? Well, write isotopes on the side, it'll be fine.
Yeah, just to make it absolutely clear.
Yeah. But also, different isotopes have got different radiation that affect you at a different distance.
God, this is when everyone had asbestos in their roof.
Yeah. So it might be it's only dangerous if you ingest it. So therefore, in a wooden box, it's fine. It's just if you drink it like Actimel, that's when it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
David Traynor taking issue with this. He does say, come on, in Planet Evil, the Doctor keeps antimatter in a bloody tobacco tin.
I thought it was like a toffee.
It's a toffee tin. It's it's Yeti web that is kept in a tobacco tin in the Web of Fear. But the tin is a material.
A similarly dangerous substance. I mean, it's quite... I know I'm on the prosecution. It's quite nice, though, in this very gritty story to remind ourselves we are still watching Doctor Who with massive isotopes written on a box, right? You know, to have people stuck to cars, to have things being magicked into the air, like in amongst all of these high octane James Bond action sequences and long laborious shuttles coming in.
Well,
to
and the opening
scientific-
scene between the Doctor and Liz is loads of fun. You know, that's an entirely sort of comic piece, and it's rather jolly.
I wonder if it's in 5 and 6 where the Doctor, I don't know who said it in the comments, Hannah Cooper, was it? That she's fine with the stuff at the start, the conspiracy stuff, the government stuff. When we head into space in 5 and 6, that's when it drags its heels a bit. You know, like you could probably do it in an episode. Get him up there, get him talking to the ambassador, get him down. I'll still maintain you could lop 3 episodes off of this. Liz Shaw's escape. You know, lots of set pieces that happen in this. They're pretty. They look great. They pass the time in the 25 minutes on a Saturday night. Yes. Are they needed to tell the story? Probably not. No.
You could lop a couple of courses out of a lovely feast and probably not miss them. But if you didn't, but if you have the feast and those courses are there, you go, well, I wouldn't have wanted to do without those. You know, so just because something is disposable, it doesn't mean that its presence isn't nourishing, enriching, and rather wonderful.
I mean, it's worth pointing out as well that Terence Dicks went on record time and time again, wonderfully in the Spearhead from Space commentary alongside Derek Sherwin. It's absolutely beautiful, that commentary, where he basically spells out all the things he was lumbered with when Derek Sherwin buggered off and worked on something else. Nobody wanted 7-parters. This was not the ideal length of a Doctor Who story. I think they knew that people would get bored with a story that lingers on for, what's that? It's like 2 months and a bit. It's a long time.
I find the 7-parters drag. I genuinely think, and I'm not just saying this because I'm here to defend the Ambassadors of Death, and it took me a long time to come round to later Pertwee as well, which I'd been led to believe was one thing by the Target books, and I was actually rather disappointed by its coziness, which I now cherish and love. But when I was a self-loathing teenager, I wanted the Pertwee era to be more like season 7 than the rest of it. I love the rest of it now, but I have to say, I find the 3 7-parters less padded than probably any Pertwee 6-parter. I find the extra episode gives you space to explore an extra story strand properly, so that something like the Plague in Silurians, or I think the going to the planet is a very important plot twist here, and it gives it another dimension. It gives us the chance for the stories to feel like they've got a greater sort of breadth of storytelling, like Evil does, like Marco Polo does. That in the 6-parters they don't quite stretch. So what they do is they'll just bung in a couple of episodes of padding or whatever, or make things other. It feels that canvas allows for a sort of widescreen a widescreen plot landscape, if you like, that I don't think you quite get with the 6-parters, which seem more sort of pan and scan, if you like, if that metaphor works. I'm not sure it does, so let's not linger on it.
I mean, the Pertwee 4-parters just feel like they go by in a lick, don't they? Because they're surrounded by, you look at Day of the Daleks, the Time Warrior, Carnival of Monsters, I think we could do all. You would lose a lot. You would lose a lot of substance and character beats and all of that. But I do think you could probably tell all 3 of these stories in 4 episodes.
There are cut down versions on the Blu-ray, but I haven't seen them yet.
No, I haven't either. I'm intrigued.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'll be intrigued to see what they took out as well.
Yeah.
Probably an entire episode of him like sitting on his arse, flying up into space, only to get there and go, "Oh, hello, you're watching the cricket. Oh, goodbye." Probably that.
But I like that bit, because it takes us to the space bit, and we meet the guys, and we see what's happened to Van Leyden, and the poor actors who've spent the whole thing looming at least get to show their faces. And I love the alien behind the Venetian blinds. On Mars. I mean, I'm surprised you haven't used that as part of the prosecution. Why have they got Venetian blinds on Mars? Where are we supposed to be?
Toby, good question. What's with the blinds?
I've not heard of
on
window
Mars?
shutters on Mars.
They're
Yeah,
shy, that's all.
what's going on with the Venetian blinds on Mars? What's
Yeah.
that?
This is all getting a bit crusty and film now. We're having a go at the interior design of an alien planet. Yeah.
I mean, it's a good property, you know, near to local amenities. Slightly long commute maybe from Earth if you happen to buy property there, but you know,
How are
but
you
the
going to
blinds
live it?
would
How are
probably
you going to list it? Or are you going to blow it up
Yep.
from the sky?
blow it from the sky.
Option
Yeah.
seekers.
Carrington's
Every
great gift to the ambassadors in the first visit, you know. Some Venetian blinds.
While we consider what we can give as a housewarming gift to the ambassadors to furnish their new pads, we'll go for a little quick break for a few minutes. Just before we do, we've had a couple of comments come in. One I can't put up on screen because it's on Blue Sky, but Lucy McCall says, I could have commented at the time, she's having problems commenting on YouTube. She said she would have mentioned that Britain had an active space programme from 1953 when Professor Quatermass's crew returned. So there you go, actually. Great. And just before we go for a break, time for one more comment. It is from David, who says, Toby leaning into the camera and rebuffing Joe with a single semi-bewildered no has been the highlight of this evening for me. It can only go downhill from here. Right then, let's take a few minutes break. When we come back, we will have the second half of the trial and we will ultimately find out whether the Ambassadors of Death is guilty or not guilty of crimes against Doctor Who. If you haven't already voted, go to tinyurl.com/postbox vote free or click on the link in the episode description on YouTube. It'll take you to the poll, cast your vote, and the results will be revealed at the end of the show.
One of you vote guilty, please.
We'll find out if anybody does that. We'll be back in a few minutes for the continuation of the trial. We'll see you very shortly.
I cross the void beyond the mind, the empty space that circles time. I see where others stumble blind, to seek a truth they never find. Eternal wisdom is my guide. I am the Doctor.
And we're back for the second half of the trial of the Ambassadors of Death on the Polis Box Live. While we're away, the comments about the interior design on Mars has really struck a chord with the audience because Dylan Reese has been in touch to say, as David Bowie once asked, is there blinds on Mars?
Can I make a terrible confession, though?
Absolutely.
I proffered that observation about going, it's Venetian blinds on Mars, with the confidence of somebody who'd stumbled across an excellent joke. But that joke would have been based on if Venetian was actually Venusian, and I'm there going, because they should be on Venus if they're Venusian. Of course, it was only when we were coming out of it that I went, oh no, they're actually called Venetian blinds, and we don't have Venus on this planet. So what? Oh no, because they're Venetian, they're not Venusian. But in my head, I just got stuck on Venetian means from Venus, which I know in the other part of my brain that it doesn't. So I proffered it with the confidence of somebody who'd got this marvelous joke, when actually what I'd got was a complete misapprehension about the situation, and so I was talking bollocks with unnecessary confidence, which I think stands me in good stead for political office these days. Kapow! Sorry about that. I've also got a sad feeling I probably do the same on Behind the Sofa, and that's now, and now I'm thinking about it. Going, I hope that didn't make the edit, but I bet it probably did. So it's a joke that I should have been doing, but only if the words meant something different to what they actually mean. And now that's going to haunt me forever and ever and ever, like a looming spacesuit in silhouette with the sun shining behind it.
It's fine, Toby. This isn't live. We can edit it afterwards. It's not a problem. Not a problem at all.
I don't know what I prefer more, you know, your jokes or your explanations of your jokes. They are gold. Can I just say as well? My God, that music! Did you hear it?
Oh, it's a great score.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. And I bet it's a shame we came back early from the break because there was more of it there. So, we'll maybe play
What the
something.
hell was that John Pertwee song, though?
Oh, that's from the Wurzel Gummidge album.
The album?
Scarecrow's Party, I think it's called. But yeah. Seminole and robust.
Amazing.
Right, before we carry on with the trial, I can reveal what the scores are at the moment. Now, the last 2 episodes have been fairly one-sided, I think it's close to say, but at the moment, and I'm not going to reveal which side is which, but it is currently 52% to 48% on
no,
it is that close.
Yeah.
So there you go, everything to play for in the second half. If you have not voted already, go to tinyurl.com/postbox vote free, or click on the link in the episode description. It'll take you there.
Because I think with ambassadors, there are champions of ambassadors who speak very loudly, and people who love ambassadors will do podcasts about it, or blogs about it, or tweets about it, or write robust defense about it. But most people, I think, still it still retains its residual sort of air of disappointment, and people don't bother to say it because that's just the general feeling. So I think it has. I do think much as the people who love it a lot. The general sort of unspoken word is the other side, which I think is a tragedy and means that evil lurks in small unspoken corners.
Yeah, I certainly don't think it's alone in that regard. So,
I do love it. Oh, this is really annoying me now.
Yeah. Be worse, Joe. Be worse.
I've been pretty bad, Toby.
This is David Cameron and Brexit all over again.
Jesus Christ.
But I'll just say the ambassadors are death shit. What's the worst that could happen? And now look where we are.
Oh boy.
I mean,
I ain't got much for round 2. Don't worry about it.
You couldn't have just pretended for 2 hours, could you? You couldn't have.
What's that? What? I hate it.
Yeah,
It's so
but I also think that's counted against us. I think the fact that at the beginning, even one of the prosecutors is going, "I really love it." Actually, I think anybody who was wavering is, because people like to, people don't want to go with the flow, or if a result is obvious. If you're pro the obvious result, you're not going to vote, and if you're wavering, you'll go, "Oh well, what's to be lost if I vote guilty?" And now look what happens. This is what happens. Injustice is possible.
All these people who like ambassadors are stealing your jobs and your way of life and your culture.
Prepare the boats.
Yes.
Stop the boats with Venetian blinds on them. That's what we say.
Stop the Mars probes.
One thing we definitely won't stop is the trial, so let's get that resumed. Let's go around again then. So, Toby, let's have another point. Once you finish your drink, for the defence of the ambassadors of death, please.
Well, I mean, it's a bit boring, but why change the habit of a lifetime? But I have to invoke the cast. It is an absolutely fantastic array of talent. And I mean, the weakest performance, I will even defend the weakest performance because I think this has snowballed unnecessarily. And I blame, I think, the discontinuity guide, which said Tartalian has a French accent in some scenes and not in others. And now you see people all over quoting. It's the same way when they quote and say one of the Vervoids is a Scouser and he's not. When Chris Clough said, "Oh, and I cast a Scouser as a Vervoid," he actually means Tony Scoggo, who plays the guy who disguises himself as a Megarian. But he's using shorthand, and people go, "Oh yeah," and you can hear one of the Vervoids is Scouse. Neither of the Vervoids is Scouse. So it's just one of these things that's gained traction. Tartalian speaks 4 words on. That's what discontinuity guide says. It says he's French in the studio and he's not on film. He's not French on film. And people have gone, yeah, in some scenes he hasn't got his French accent. He has 4 lines on film, and they're each of 1 syllable. Get in, Miss Shaw. That's the only time he's not French. So this idea that Tartalian is this sort of wayward performance that in some scenes is speaking a completely different accent to others is nonsense. And
I mean, his other accent, Toby, is very thick.
Well,
It's
his I mean,
get
it's,
in, monsieur.
I think it's really tricky as well with French accents. When I said Robert Corddry was born in France, and I know that that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but this isn't the only time he plays a Frenchman either. So I think at the time he was perfectly acceptable casting for French. And I always doubt when people go, yeah, that accent was terrible, because sometimes I remember when a French character came into the Archers and everyone went, God, that French character, he's got a terrible French accent, and the actor was called Jean-Yves Escargot or something, and was as French as you like. Sometimes it's very much about context and expectation. And if we want to knock something, I think it's always the sign of a lazy TV critic to me, who will when they criticize accents in things. But so I think it's quite difficult sometimes to be objective about accents. But it doesn't to me sound any worse than many other things. I still think it's probably he's the weaker performance and weaker character, really. I think Tartaglia is quite comfortable there. I love Gary Gillett's description of him in his DWM review of it, where he says, you imagine that when he takes his glasses off, his nose and his beard will come with it, which I think is a beautiful image that Gary, who's a great writer,
impressive
on
beard, isn't it?
And it's not the greatest of beards. But I think even Corddry is fine, and there is excellence elsewhere. I think John Abernethy is magnificent as General Carrington, and I love the fact that he gets to keep his dignity at the end. And I love his sort of studied insanity. He doesn't chew the scenery, really. He's sort of single-minded, and he's intransigent and sort of determined in his own way. Michael Wisher, I think, is fantastic and he even goes to the extent that he looks like he's reading from an auto cue, even though he's not actually in real life. That sort of attention to detail. Ronald Allen has been mentioned, who I think has a really difficult task. Ralph Cornish could be really boring, and he could also be really boring the way that Annan plays him, with this sort of cool, studied, almost monotone, but he makes it work, and I don't quite know why, but I think it's wonderful. It gives it a real sort of plausible, cool, professional in a difficult situation, and I love the way that he interacts with the others as well. And when he goes, I think he's insane. Sexy.
Toby, he's such a great actor.
He's fabulous, isn't he?
He manages to make the Dominators watchable.
Well, indeed.
You, Fraser.
And yet, I remember when he died, poor old Ronald Allen, even on his tribute on the news, there was a kind of sort of sniffiness because he'd spent all of that time in Crossroads. But I think he's wonderful in both of his Who's. He's a terrific actor. William Dysart, who I think has the time of his life and perhaps even the role of his life. I mean, he gets killed within 3 minutes of the Highlanders, poor chap. He's got a decent role in Survivors. But I think he's fantastic as Regan, and I think Regan is great and suave and funny. He's so funny, like when he says, make a list and make yourselves at home, which I mentioned before, and somebody remembers you. He's which is addressed to Cyril Shaps, who is perfect casting as he's exceedingly good casting. The voice of Mr. Kipling is exceedingly good casting as fussy, beleaguered scientist, and I love the fact that he gets a certain rabbit courage on a couple. When he stands up and says, and keep an eye on that girl and all of that. I love all of that.
He's a great sniveler, isn't he, Cyril Shaps?
Yeah. Oh, he's got a sort of certain damaged kind of dignity about him. He's like he's like a mole who's being blackmailed, and even. I think Rick Felgate, who Ferguson uses a lot, partially because he's his brother-in-law, but I think he's brilliant as Van Leyden. I buy him as an astronaut, and I like the sort of professionalism of the way that those space scenes are done. There's a sort of calm tension about them all. So I think all of the performances are spot on. But I think Abernethy and Dysart and Ronald Allen are particularly strong, and you need good characters played by good actors in. That's my Doctor Who meat and drink, really, and I love the fact that none of them are sort of star actors, but they're those sort of stalwart thesps without whom this country's television landscape would have been all the poorer in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I love the fact that Doctor Who is chock full of those sorts of performers, and that this story has three of the best of them, and it's a joy to see them. And I think they all add an extra touch of class to this show. So I would say the cast is particularly strong in this. The cast is particularly strong in this one, and sad to note that the cast in this one is largely no longer with us. In fact, there's a couple of episodes of the Ambassadors of Death, certainly one episode of the Ambassadors of Death, where none of the credited cast are still alive.
Wow. I thought, Towtalion, I thought that beard and that accent were so obviously fake that at some point there would be a reveal that was a disguise. The biggest shock for me was that he was actually a real person.
Yeah, well, maybe it needs an extra episode to finish off the Italian subplot. Where he goes, actually, Doctor, I'm the Undersecretary for Wording.
Another one.
I mean, there's a moment in Titalian's accent where he sounds like he's Paris via Paisley.
Hey, you.
I don't know if he wasn't actually his natural, because I've seen him play Scots, so I wonder if his actual accent was Scottish.
What is Towtalian's motive in this? Is that revealed?
Pointing guns at people all the time.
Why? I know I keep saying this, but it's a little bit muddy.
He was doing what he was ordered to / asked to by his political and military superiors in order to get access to alien ambassadors. Think of all the knowledge they could give
that's
you.
the whole thing, is that the bad guys are, in the eyes of many people, the good guys. And so that's why Titalian is slightly beleaguered, because he's being told to do things by his superiors, but it's a kind of, keep this under your hat, because presumably if you take that off, it'll take the beard and glasses and nose with it as well. And your hair, because there are certain things that need to know, love.
I think he gets the best death in the whole thing. That suitcase, that suitcase.
He's an intelligent man, a scientifically based man who then decides to fall for some kind of Wile E. Coyote Acme time bomb trick. Then just like, oh yeah, it's going to explode his fucking face straight away.
I don't think he's ever characterized as being particularly clever. It's a good way for him to go.
But he has to, as a cat, he has to.
His own petard.
Arguing with my partner here. Face now.
Prosecution, yes.
Yes. Prosecution. Not liking it, Joe. Yes.
What can we quickly talk about the aliens then in this?
So going to
full argument in this thing. And that is, are they the least well-defined aliens in Doctor Who of all time?
Yes.
What do we know about these people?
That's cool. Come on, talk to the children of it. Yeah, it's very Nigel Neal. You don't need to chat to them. You don't need to know anything about them. The fact that they're a threat there, that's much better than them going, and we were born on the 3rd of April, 1904, and our mums were sad because it was tough being a lady in the old days. We're recovering alcoholics, so even though we kill people, you've got to be sad for us.
Have you got an issue with modern day television?
Maybe.
I'd never have guessed.
If this had been modern day television, just after, cut it open, episode 3 would have begun, and then it would have gone 15 years ago, and we'd have had a really boring episode showing us what had led up to this point.
I would suggest that the Silurians are a lot more interesting in their story because they are so well defined. And these aliens are perhaps a little more forgettable.
But do you then not run the risk of having a very samey
of the spacesuit, coming out of the
But then you'd have gone, for your prosecution, you'd have gone, we had interesting aliens last week, and this week, the problem with this episode is that the aliens are really well defined. And what we need is
straws, all right.
Yeah. Space straws.
Really noisy ones.
Yeah. I mean, they're beautifully shot, the aliens, and the spacesuit, when the face comes up and it's that horrible pus.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Face.
Brilliant.
Absolutely horrific. I would like to have seen a bit more of that, though.
Very close to a Borat.
Huh? Very close to the Borat.
Yeah. You know, that would be a reveal. In Time Lash, obviously, years later.
That he was one of the ambassadors.
Yeah, he was one of the ambassadors. Remember, Doctor, I was an ambassador. You did not give me the Ferrero Rocher, and here I am. Prepare the Time Lash.
I think watching it through, the thing that really struck me thinking about the story negatively, forcing myself to do it. Sorry, Cam. It was you can see the rewrites. Like you can see, you know, the plot is a bit muddy. The motives are occasionally a bit muddy. People aren't as defined as they could be, but we know why that happened. But I do think, I do think, you know, the characterization perhaps isn't as strong as the characterization in the Silurians and Inferno. The motivations aren't as good. Like, there's good stuff here, but I can see a work in progress rather than a finished result sometimes.
Yes, it does indeed. And you get 3 writers involved in it, and it ends up just becoming this sort of grey blancmange of a story.
Say that.
I did. Well, I have.
Oh.
It's not. It's a sexy conspiracy theory action adventure with paranoia and.
Oh no! I don't know what it wants to be.
And finishing
One point, it's like a kind of like Twilight Zone. The astronauts went up into space, but did they come back? Which is fine. That would have been fine. Stretch that out. Grand. Not a problem at all. On the other hand, it wants to be this spy thriller, this Bond-esque spy thriller about nuclear armament. Fine, that's fine, but not the two together, and not as underwhelming as both of them end up being.
No,
no, stressed.
Yes.
So your argument's gone from this is a 7-parter and there's not enough in it to this 7-parter has got too much in it.
And it's got 2 things that don't normally go together put together, which is unlike everything that's great about Doctor Who, to put 2 things that don't normally go together.
That'd be like dinosaurs in
space. Hit a critical mass of dissonance and juxtaposition that makes it go.
Called Ambassadors of Death, and you only really get like 2 scenes in which they explain as to why they're there in the first place.
The Caves of Androzani has no caves; it only has blowholes, and it's on Androzani Minor.
The blowholes of Androzani.
Galaxy 4 isn't even in Galaxy 4. Galaxy 4 is where some of the people in it are from.
I don't know. It just doesn't sit. It's a horrible.
Doctor Who and the Silurians is about the Doctor and the ear scenes. I mean, come on.
Doctor Who and
we do correct that.
I mean, I don't know about you guys. I'd pay good money to see the blowholes twang of Androzani.
Yes.
Give me that collection, Blu-ray. I'm buying that straight off the bat.
Can you imagine?
That's intriguing.
That sounds like tonight's house band, doesn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, for your dining and dancing pleasure, the blowholes of Androzani. And a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4.
Tip your waitresses.
Yes,
always. No, literally, no, they don't like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more to add on Toby's point about the cast?
Not really. I think we've diverted from it as much as I was going to.
Okay. In that case, let's go to the next point for the prosecution, which is Joe Ford.
Oh, crikey. What have I got left?
He's done it, Richie.
I'm not here. Hang on.
He's not exactly done it, Richie. We have been doing this for 2 hours.
It's 2 hours. It's not 20 minutes. But...
The whole thing about the mystery of who killed Cyril Shaps, is that needed? Do we need any of that? That feels a bit like filler to me. Liz Shaw's escape attempts, that feels like, no, I've sort of covered it.
Yeah.
Well, Jesus,
I don't know if I've to kill Cyril Shaps or he'll blow the whole thing. And having it a mystery as to who kills him makes it mysterious, which makes it exciting. I mean, you can't have a go at something for mysteriousness. Oh, it was just too intriguing, says Joe. They didn't just have somebody come out and explain what was happening.
Oh God, Cam, have you got anything else?
Yeah, I've got the chase sequence that, speaking of Liz Shaw's escape attempts, what the fucking hell's going on with that? It's like she's in high heel boots and she manages to outrun 2 highly trained military personnel. What the fuck is going on with that? And yeah, it's that we've already mentioned Liz Shaw's costume changes. As much as she's introduced as this character, this scientifically minded woman on par with the Doctor, she's effectively becomes like some kind of like clothes horse in this sort of most of the story.
Just because somebody's a scientist, do you mean they can't dress in a way that makes them feel good?
No, just say where in amongst all these like high sort of like these tense moments does she suddenly turn around and go, actually, I'm just going to nip home and just put something else on, guys. I'll just come back.
Never heard of female emancipation, Cam?
Nah, not around these parts, mate.
Oh, fair.
Not around these parts.
Not in Dumfries and Galloway, no.
Not in Dumfries and Galloway. No.
And Liz is fantastic in it. There's that brilliant bit where she says to the Heavy, she says, "Don't worry, I won't hurt you." She's cool, and the way she gets Lennox to do the right thing, and the way she stands up to Regan, Liz is fantastic in this story. She doesn't outrun those Heavies. They catch up with her and throw her over a weir.
It is a terrible shame, though, that whoever said it in the comments that she doesn't get more time with Pertwee. She gets 4 stories with Pertwee, and they just don't get the screen time to do.
That's real world circumstances, though, isn't it? That's nothing to do with the
character. It's her own fault for getting knocked up.
I just said it was a shame. All right.
Yeah.
I want more of them together. They work.
Also, I was determined to find out during this story as to why a facility which is designed for space flight and space launching of rockets to Mars looks an awful lot like a gasworks. Bit perplexed at that one.
That's all they've got to film all year, all right?
What the fuck's going on with that?
Have you seen the SpaceX facilities? They look like a gasworks. They just have a big fucking rocket in the middle, but apart from that, it's a gasworks. A bunch of steam and pipes everywhere.
Just would we as the nation of Scotland will launch our space program from the nearest oil rig.
I'm going to have to betray you now, but gasworks look so fucking cool. They look cool in this, and they look cool in Inferno. That's why.
Dear God.
And I think you'll find that Scotland is launching its rockets from Shetland.
Oh.
That's where we're launching our rockets from. And they're being tested in Midlothian.
Sure.
Wow.
Just down the road from you, Dave, yeah?
Yep. So that's where Scotland's space industry is.
Gareth always been in touch to shed some light on how Liz Shaw was managing to run away from those highly trained military personnel. It's because she's got legs of steel from walking those test tubes to the Doctor.
Of course, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Another mystery solved on the Postbox Live.
Yep. There we go.
But also, I think it's good for Liz Shaw that she gets to escape. She could have just been the companion that was kidnapped and held hostage and then waits for the Doctor to come and rescue her, and she doesn't.
Yeah.
She takes the power into her own hands and runs.
Then she gets carted back again and has to wait for the Doctor to rescue her.
I would also argue they're not highly trained military personnel. They're Regan's Heavies. It's Derek Martin and Nosha Powell, isn't it? That you get if they'd wanted military personnel, there'd have been a Terry Walsh there, or maybe Derek Ware or something. But they're definitely of the more thuggish variety of chaser. So they're big guys. So what they have in strength, if they were in a scrum, they'd be the props. They wouldn't be so they'd be in the scrum in the rugby. They wouldn't be charging down the wing. So so once they catch you, you're in trouble. But they're not so good at catching you because they're heavier and stronger and bigger. Yeah, so
I'm not sure why she runs on a really narrow weir though.
Well, she's just running.
Why?
She's just running.
With like water either side of her. I mean,
she's just running. She doesn't know where she's going. She's just trying to get away. She's just trying to get away.
Where are they less likely
to hasn't planned it in advance.
Across a field or across the weir. The weirs were risky, so they're less likely to follow her.
She could have probably just activated the security protocol and like been stuck to the wheel of Bessie, and then Bessie could have accelerated off at great speed.
Yeah, well, that's the Doctor's fault for not teaching her the ins and outs.
It seems like across that field in high heels as well, like high heel boots.
Yeah.
Plus, the mud would have made a mess of them. At least the weir would wash them clean.
Yeah,
it's a shame she didn't go into space. Like, there's so many things that Liz Shaw didn't do because she wasn't around for too long. I would have liked for her to have gone up into space with Pertwee in this one and just done a bit more than just hang out in a base.
She could have been Barbarella.
That would have worked.
Yeah.
With a
I
massive.
mean, I do love at the end. Oh, sorry, Cam. That he says, you know, Miss Shaw will stay here and take care of everything, and he goes off, and he absolutely trusts her to deal with, you know, the ambassadors and the whole situation. I think that's lovely. There's a respect there with Liz Shaw that you don't.
And of course, the only reason the Doctor gets to go into space is because
hold on with that one.
Is because of
Have more ads.
Oh, Lee can't hear people now.
No, sorry, I've accidentally unplugged the headphones there. I'm assuming that was a no.
No, I was just the whole Liz couldn't have gone with the Doctor into space because there's a whole point made of the Doctor can go because he's special space Doctor, and there's been things put in place that have scuppered the availability of other astronauts. So, and you can kind of buy that the Doctor, being from outer space, is going to pass all these tests. But to then go, and my plucky assistant is also good at space, would have been a bit too much. Much as it would have been lovely to have.
I think it's wish fulfillment on my part rather than it would make any sense.
Yeah,
I just want more Liz.
I don't think he ever mentions that as a reason for him being able to go up into space, does he? He doesn't sort of sit there and ever go, I'm an alien,
No, but he passes all the tests with flying colours, doesn't he?
Yeah. It's
Ralph Cornish goes, I hang on, you look like a 50-year-old man, and by cracky, this bit of paper shows that you've got exceptional things.
Yeah.
We've heard those rumours. John Pertwee, so Okay, right then. Shall we go to the final point for the defence then, which would be Dave?
Yeah, let's do it. So, I've talked a lot about how very 70s a lot of this series is because it looks so 70s. Whether it's the bits where they're driving down high streets or just the general fashion. But to an extent, this story is so timeless because it is the threat of the outsiders and a xenophobic military guy going, we have to kill them all no matter what because they're wrong and different. And we've touched on politics in Ukraine, but not even that. This could be a modern Mark Gatiss story about people from Japan in the 17th century, but they're really good assassins, so we use them to kill people. Or it could be people from Afghanistan in the war that we've just not long ago had coming over and getting used by the British military. It's a timeless story of both people coming across and getting used and abused by the government, and also the government whipping up distrust of people who are different and that we don't like and don't understand us for their own nefarious ends. And it's nice when you strip all of the Doctor Who disappearing magic tricks away and you've got an actual story about maybe we should just try and listen to people that are different because they're not actually that different. And it's nice when Doctor Who does stories like this because they don't always do them. Because, they are the ambassadors of death, and we're led through most of it to think, if they touch you, you will die. They are evil. But as it goes on, we realise they're also prisoners. They're being abused. So they're more and more like us than they are like them, the suits, the civil servants, the generals. They are different. They're trying to start a war. Whereas these guys are also just being used by them. And as much as it is a very 70s episode, a 70s story, it's also timeless. Because it could be made with modern Who. It could be made in a classic style. And it's nice when they do it that way.
Wouldn't be 3.5 hours, though, if it was done today, would it?
No, it might be 6-hour-long episodes.
Wow.
Busting out the Flux defence again.
A million subplots.
Or it might be 153 2-minute webisodes. We don't know. But it's a timeless story. Because it is, as I say, about accepting outsiders. No matter what we're told about them, get to know them ourselves. Because there will be communication issues at the start, but if you use your intelligence and you are nice and welcoming, then they are just like you. And I think that's always something we need to remember.
It's a good message, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good message. It's like Dave just entered Miss World or something. It's a good message to have. Yeah.
One day I hope for
Yeah,
world
legs.
peace.
Hope for world peace.
Oh no.
I
What do
mean,
you mean not with those legs? How very dare you?
I don't think we should be saying that Doctor Who's stressing that we shouldn't have a dislike for the unlike is a bad thing.
No.
Yeah, this is a very difficult point to argue against.
Yes.
I'm putting you in a bit of a corner here, lads.
No, we should be. No, they're different. Fuck
Say
'em.
something terrible.
I mean, they're bloody ugly, but I don't,
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
it's
not like
just-
us and we can't understand them.
The emphasis is towards the end of this story kind of weirdly put on the human side of things rather than the actual ambassadors. They almost seem to be a bit of a sideshow because Carrington kind of takes over the last episode, especially.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's what kind of gets me about this, in the fact that it's called the Ambassadors of Death. But at the end of it, it's all really a kind of interplay in all the human side of things and all the human characters in it. To the point where the ending is essentially just the Brig and Carrington arguing over who's got the biggest army. And then all having a little conversation around a table, and the Doctor just goes, "Oh, you're right then," and then walks off. That's pretty much it. It seems it was kind of a missed opportunity there to have some kind of the ambassadors, through the Venetian blinds comes the main ambassador, and he appears on Earth. Even if he just teleports into that room or something like that.
making it
And
into a
as the
very
critical-
bad Star Trek episode now.
Yeah. And as Star Trek's all right. And as it's having something like that happen at the end, for a big ending. Whereas as it is, it's just Carrington basically going, "Oh, okay then," and that's it. And I felt the ending for that reason was a little bit of a damp squib.
But I think they've done it that way so that the ambassadors can always represent the generic outsider. If they gave them form and function and a name and political ideas and this is what we stand for, they would be too defined. We don't want them defined. They're the outsider.
Well, and they are fear of the unknown is what they
Yeah.
are. So if they suddenly go, "Hello, my name is Ambassador Twing, and
Yeah.
my name is
I mean,
Ambassador
they kind of do,
Twang,"
right? That one on the screen kind of does.
But we don't. But we don't have. I mean, we have that chat that the Doctor has to have with them in order to move the plot along. But if they'd taken a bigger role, if the two ambassadors, that they used to break into the base, if they suddenly got chatty and we'd have gone, and oh, actually, it turns out we have hobbies as well, in a scene like the one between Rose and Eve Miles in The Unquiet Dead, where suddenly, oh, we're all actually the same. The whole point is actually if they are a bit sort of a bleak, we can't quite. This is what I talked about earlier, that the fact that they are slightly out of reach and they're slightly unclear. It's the story is actually the effect that they have on us, and you can't do a thing about fear of the unknown, which is actually what drives most of us, which is and conspiracy theories are all part of that as well. Is people trying to sort of nail stuff down, even with stuff that's absolutely defeatable nonsense, is because we don't like to not be in on things. We don't like to not have a definitive answer, and that can make us make up all sorts of crazy nonsense. And that's what these aliens represent. And so if they suddenly did have sort of palpable form and identity, that wouldn't be the story. The story is what they do to General Carrington and what that can do. They're like the ambassadors are just there to light the blue touch paper. And I think within the whole mosaic of Doctor Who, that makes it really interesting because we have plenty of alien invasions where we have aliens and we know what they're like and we know what they want and they know what they do. This is about what aliens, or the spectre of aliens, or the idea of aliens does to us. And I think that makes it really interesting and special.
It's a bit like, it's a little bit like, oh no, sorry, Cam. Power of the Daleks, isn't it? In Power of the Daleks is how all those different characters can exploit the Daleks. And in this, you've got Quinlan exploiting the ambassadors for political reasons. You've got Carrington exploiting them because he wants to right a wrong. You've got Reagan exploiting them because he wants to be rich. It's kind of interesting. So the fact that it does all boil down in that last episode to, instead of it being like, an alien army, one man humiliated on camera, it's kind of devastating, actually. To boil it down to the human drama. Oh God, whose side am I on?
You keep forgetting.
I just love this story so much. I can't do it.
I feel a bit. I feel a bit for Cam, because Cam is a bit like some of the characters in the Ambassadors of Death, where he's turned up for a meeting and actually realizes that person sitting opposite the table of him is betraying him and is part of a wider conspiracy.
Indeed.
Step back, Cameron.
He puts the accent on.
Yeah.
Yep. We all know that Joe's actually from Govan.
It's true. He hides it really well.
It's harder than you think, debating against something you love.
You get used to it. Trust us. You really do.
Yep. You do.
Why do you hate this one then, Dave?
No, not this one in particular. I have defended other ones that I have hated or not enjoyed. So yeah.
Yeah, that's the format.
Time in the Rani, that must have been really hard.
As a peek behind the curtain, you do kind of get into the frame of mind of looking for things that you can prosecute for or things that you can defend for. Yeah. So it's more that you just start being very analytical when you're watching Doctor Who, which when you're watching it for a podcast is great. When you're watching it to switch your brain off and ignore the outside world, it makes it a bit harder.
I can't do that anymore. I do so many bloody podcasts. I'm only watching it on that level.
Yeah.
We've ruined Doctor Who for ourselves now, haven't we? Should we just get into something else?
Yeah, no. It's got my job.
Like a podcast or something, eh?
Babylon 5. That's my pitch.
Oh, God, no, thank you.
Before we nail down a new format, let's start summing up then. So, who will we go to first? Let's go the all the way around. So, Cam, let's have your summing up as to why the Ambassadors of Death is guilty of crimes against Doctor Who, please.
Relying on you, Cam.
Okay. Okay. Ambassadors of Death really wants to be a spy thriller, but it falls massively short of this in all departments. The constant turning of the supporting characters into spies becomes tiresome very quickly, and the otherworldly aspects that it builds up fairly well in the opening are discarded to one side for the bulk of the runtime. It's a story that just seems to focus on who gets kidnapped next. It's the Doctor Who story that underlines all the problems of not having the TARDIS around to go on some fantastic flight of fancy. Instead, we get this flat and lifeless spy story. Tinker, Taylor, Soldier, why? Guilty.
That deserves a vote for that joke alone, really, doesn't it?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dave, do you want to give us your summing up as to why the Ambassadors of Death is not guilty of crimes against Doctor Who, please?
From the very open, this tries new things with the new title and the new arrangements, and it's great for that alone. But also it tells a timeless story of, as Toby says, the fear of the unknown, and it deliberately doesn't flesh out the unknown so it can stay the fear of the unknown. We get great actors doing great characters, and we see character development throughout. The companions are great. We see the Doctor and Brig getting on. We see Liz getting to do stuff for herself and as an actual individual. We see Benton, who's now a sergeant. So we know that these background characters are real people. They're not like the interchangeable red shirts on Star Trek. All of it's well shot. It looks good. There's these scenes in space where the ships are docking. We didn't even talk about that. Obviously inspired by 2001. But also it inspires future things like Red Dwarf, because it looks the same as that. So it shows where Doctor Who sits in the progression of British science fiction. It's got the live space broadcasts that look like they could be done in a modern SpaceX launch. It's got all these good things about it. The only bad thing about it is it's only 7 episodes. It should be 8 or 9. and that's why it's not guilty.
What?
I think I've lost half the prosecution there, Dave. Right. Well, let's give him a chance to rebut that. Joe, why is the Ambassadors of Death guilty of crimes against Doctor Who?
7 episodes of suspense, action. Oh no, wait. No, it is really.
Oh, behave.
Sorry. The most marvelous character acting you'll ever see. Hang on.
Joe.
Reset, Joe. Reset.
I do think it's a bit muddled in the middle. I think they lose track of who's on. I think the script writers lose track in the middle episodes as to who's on whose side, and it does come good at the end. But there is a bit in the middle where Liz Shaw's going from one person to the other, the ambassador's going from one person to the other, the shuttle's going from one person to the other. Half of it's padding, half of it's sort of confusion. It's superbly executed, so it's still entertaining to watch. But I can see layers of various scripts all coming together. And I do think the characters' motives aren't as smooth or as realistic as perhaps they could be. And I do think the episodes 5 and 6, where he goes up into space, that could easily be condensed down into one episode. All the stuff of him preparing, fuck that. Let's just get him up there, all right? And that's what the plot needs. Yeah, it's. Oh God, I really like it. It's. I'll leave it there.
Behave.
Hey. Before you say anything else.
Oh God, I really like it. I'll leave it there.
And finally then, Toby, let's have your summing up as to why the Ambassadors of Death is not guilty of crimes against Doctor Who, please.
Well, never mind, Tinker Tailor Soldier, why I am one of the smiley people about the Ambassadors of Death. And I reject the idea that everyone's a spy anyway. I think the twists and turns of the characters are all watertight in terms of the story, and they're leaked out piece by piece as the story develops. I don't think it's like Invasion of the Dinosaurs, where we just suddenly need another reveal of a character for a shock moment. I think these are much more organic, and I think the Ambassadors of Death, Doctor Who is often at its best when it takes the best of other things, and Ambassadors of Death is very like Nigel Neal. There's elements of those brilliant 50s serials in this, but then it looks forward to stuff like The X-Files, which was huge when it was launched and seemed to be so refreshing because it had this, oh God, is the government involved in alien conspiracy up to the highest level? And that sort of storytelling is something that seems to tap into a lot about our culture and actually makes the Ambassadors of Death perhaps even more resonant today than it was at the time. But I think what's so special about it is that even though it's amongst those industrial, lengthy season 7, gritty season 7, all has that same sort of uniform feel, it is nonetheless a story that is unlike any other story. It just has a feel and a vibe to it, and a confluence of different things, from the score to the way that it's shot to that strange unreachability that it has, that makes it very unusual, and the ambition to tell a different type of story where it's humanity's reaction to the aliens that is more of a threat than the aliens themselves, which makes it rather special. So even if it does have flaws, they are bred of the fact that it is more ambitious rather than, I would say, more disjointed than other Doctor Who. I think it's trying deliberately to do something with the format that works within the storytelling that Doctor Who gives us, but refreshes it, even though the sort of visual trappings might be similar. And I think mostly it's because this is a stitch up. That the Ambassadors of Death has always been on trial for a crime it didn't commit because of gossip and planted evidence that suggested it was this disappointing, fractured piece that didn't make any sense. But that was largely bred of what the production team had felt at the time, and I think the evidence has been misrepresented for many years, so that people have kind of assumed it's guilty and gone in expecting it to be so, and have therefore been less forgiving of some of its possible sins than it might be with other Doctor Who's. And I think a fresh look at the evidence might suggest that actually what it does is its apparent flaws are actually its virtues. And I would say that it's your moral duty to find it not guilty, and because of that reputation that it had, to make this, instead of Tinker Tailor Soldier Y, make it the story that came in from the cold.
Oh, nice. That's why we paid the big bucks to get him on here tonight.
You paying him?
I mean, not much, but
metaphorically.
Yeah. Checks in the post.
He's still waiting for more checks, yeah.
So there you go, folks. You've heard from all sides. Cameron on the prosecution, Dave, Toby, and Joe on the defence. It's now
Feels that way.
Entirely in your hands. So if you've not already done so, go to tinyurl.com/postbox vote free, or click on the little link in the episode description down there. We've got a couple of minutes left to run in the poll. When we come back, we will reveal the results and find out whether the Ambassadors of Death is guilty or not guilty of crimes against Doctor Who. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes' time.
I cross the void beyond the mind, the empty space of circles time. I see where others stumble blind, to seek a truth they never find. Eternal wisdom is my guide. I am the Doctor.
And we're back. That is it. The poll has now closed. Now, early this evening, to paraphrase Cyril Sharps, it was an exceedingly close vote. Let's find out if it's remained that way. Is the Ambassadors of Death guilty or not guilty of crimes against Doctor Who? Here is how you voted. By 65% to 35%, the Ambassadors of Death is not guilty of crimes against Doctor Who. It goes into our official, unofficial canon of Doctor Who, and it means that Dave has won this series of the Postbox Live. He's 3-0 up with one trial to go.
Turns out Doctor Who fans quite like Doctor Who.
Shocking.
I think we should tip our hat to Cam, though, who was basically was ganged up against, and I have to say,
yes, thank you.
I thought made a really convincing case, and I have to be honest and say that a lot of my love for Ambassadors is very personal. I came to it under circumstances whereby it was such a pleasant surprise to me that it immediately shot up into my top 10 or my favorite story ever and all that sort of thing, that it's almost impossible for me to be objective about it. And I suspect had it been a story I'd come to in another way, or that had a different reputation with me going into it, and also because our love of Doctor Who is so, we all reach it by different routes, don't we? I think it's so hard to be objective, and this is one that's particularly difficult to be objective about. But I think it is. I think Cam did make a pretty strong case, and I can see why people who didn't come to it the route I came to it might go, I don't see what all the fuss is about. So sorry, Cam, that you were dealt a bad hand there.
I'm not
sorry. It's all right. It's not bad, give it a go. To be honest,
35% is higher than I thought.
Yeah, I was going to say 35% is more than I thought it was going to have.
Yeah,
it's practically a win.
I will just check. I'll just need to check my my prediction from earlier this evening that Lee and Dave will be aware of. Give us a wee second. No. Rangers just beat us by 1%. 36% possession to 35%. I've got for this. Sorry.
The Postbox Live blinding the worlds of Doctor Who and Scottish football because no one else will.
No one else will.
I can't even drop it as a twist. I think this story is magnificent, can I? I mean,
No.
it's
No,
just
not
No,
really.
you didn't even try, Joe. I mean,
glory.
Yeah.
No,
No, Joe, you just
it's been a long day.
were taken with absolute personal feelings, Joe. That's what you were taken up with, and then
it was like
Couldn't let it
Galaxy
lie.
4, Joe. It was pretty obvious. The twist was pretty obvious as soon as you opened your mouth.
It's just the flavour of 7. It's so unique, isn't it?
Yeah.
And just how they put the money on the screen that year. I just think it's one of the most flawless years of Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's a triumph. Well, talking of triumph, congratulations, Dave and Toby. You've sealed the win there. It means that Dave is series champion, so therefore he gets to pick which series we put on trial in series 6 of the Bolus Box Live. You're going to be here for the next episode, Dave, so why don't you tell the boys and girls at home what we'll be doing?
Hang on, Dave. Toby, do you know what the next DVD set is? So, so we can play out with that.
I do, actually, but I can't tell you.
Care to share it live?
Not if I want to continue working.
No.
So yeah, I knew I would probably be choosing the next one.
Yeah, we had an idea.
Yeah. So it comes down to a few decisions. Do I want to go new or do I want to go classic?
Okay.
And I'm aware that I particularly pick the new ones, but that's because I quite like the new ones.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also aware the last time we did a new series, it was fucking endless recordings because we did it every 2 weeks
6 months.
for 6 months.
Yes.
But I'm also aware they were just doing 3 7-parters. So it's almost like they're both bad choices to an extent.
Mm.
So I kind of whittled it down because I also don't know if I'll be defending or prosecuting.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I like to try something different and something new.
Mm.
So I thought if I was going new series, I would go with Flux. Because as I said, it's had a lot of shit from fans, but I think there's ways to defend it. And if I was going classic, then I might just do what we've not done before and go launch straight into the next series. So season 8 of the classic. So that's my 2 options in my head.
Well, I can guarantee you neither of those are the next Blu-ray set out.
Yes. You heard it here first. That's a Polish box.
That's an exclusive.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
Dave,
yeah.
Flux will be so interesting. So interesting.
And only 6
All of
episodes.
and all of its strengths.
But also, if I went for season 8, it would also be interesting because if I'm on the defense for this and prosecuting that, I'd have to fight against a lot of my own points.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it would only be, I think, 6 stories. So it's the same number of recordings, same number of stories.
5.
So
Yeah.
that's
5 and 6.
It's a 5. So it's close. It's short either way. So that's what I was thinking. And I'm probably going to go season 8, just launch straight into the next one.
Right.
Which I feel bad about now because Joe wanted us to do Flux, but it's not up to him because he just lost.
Don't you worry, I'm covering that on Strictly very soon, so I'll be all right.
So yeah, that is my choice. We're going straight into Series 8.
Season 8.
Classic. Yeah.
Okay, so just have a quick rundown of the stories in that series, which I spectacularly failed to bring up on screen earlier. Terror of the Autons. Here we go. Terror of the Autons, A Mind of Evil, The Claws of Axos, Colony in Space, and The Demons are the 5 stories we'll be doing on the next series of the Post Box.
Are we doing Colony in Space again?
We are. The recording nearly broke us when we were just in audio.
Yeah.
Like I say that, we've been going for 2 hours, 41 minutes tonight, so, you know.
Well, yeah. True.
Oh my God, dibs on defending Claws of Axos. What a night that'll be.
Yeah, but your name's down then. Okay, so there we go. That's the series we're going to be doing next, but there's a twist, isn't there, Dave?
There is.
Yep.
Because obviously, if you're defending, you're most likely to win. So what me and Cam have been doing is swapping over. So I've won this, so I should be prosecuting the next one. But it'll get quite stale, especially for us, if we're just swapping back and forth. So it's not really up to decide at this point. We want somebody else to choose. And who better, especially since we've got 2 weeks till the last of this series, to decide, than the viewers.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan is to put up a poll until the next episode which people can vote whether they want me or Cam to either defend or prosecute, and we've not worked out which yet. So there'll be a poll up. Lee will put it on the usual social medias, and the viewers get to decide who's on which side for the next series.
Okay.
So there you go. There's the cliffhanger for episode 3 of this series of the Post Box Live. So we'll put that up on Twitter, on Blue Sky, all the usual places. The power is in your hands to decide who does what next series.
Cam
But
is prosecuting, just find him, more supportive help. All right.
Yes. Please do.
But in terms of tonight, the Ambassadors of Death is found not guilty of crimes against Doctor Who. Toby, Joe, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you
Been
on.
brilliant. Been brilliant.
Before we let you go,
being as much of a turncoat as everybody else in Ambassadors of Death.
Joe, you're not the first to do that. You certainly won't be the last on here, that's for sure. Before we let you go, have you got any sort of podcasts, any shows, anything you're involved in you want to let the viewers know about? How about you, Toby?
Oh, God, yeah. Well, I have my own series of podcasts called Toby Hadoke's Time Travels. There are 3 different ones. There's one called Too Much Information, which is a deep dive into the show episode by episode, giving key facts and dates and observations and biographies of key personnel. There's one called Indefinable Magic, which is sort of whimsical essays that are sort of extended sort of comic or nerky monologues based on some aspect of Doctor Who. And then there's Happy Times and Places, which is a commentary podcast which sets itself the task of being only bringing out the positive, and I have a guest on advocating for each story and have to guess what their special, their favorite thing about each episode is. So they're all out there and available. You can get them earlier if you go on Patreon, where I've got other goodies as well. I've got archive of interviews and behind the scenes stuff from the Blu-ray and DVD stuff that I do. So various bits and bobs, and some of my comedy, because that's my proper job really, is I'm a stand-up. And I've got a book coming out very soon, which is going to be launched in the next couple of months about the making of the Quatermass experiment, and we're going to do a launch in Manchester and a launch in London, and it's been my life's work really, so I really hope people are interested in that. And I'm in this week's episode of Waterloo Road, and I'm in the new series of Ridley, which has just been announced by ITV. I play a twat in one and a prick in the other. So,
we'll put up links.
You've got range. You've got range.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah. You can do both. We'll put up links to all of those, but I should say about Waterloo Road, he does wear the best gold lame jacket this side of Martin Fry of ABC. It needs to be seen to be believed.
Yeah, well, if you're going to be wearing that jacket in a TV show, you want to be the if that jacket's going to be in an episode, you want to be the one wearing it. So.
How about you, Joe?
I don't want to follow. I'm on TV. I've got a book coming out. Thank you very much.
You're just as prolific. Come on.
Oh, fucking hell. Just put Hamster into a podcast catcher. An awful lot of episodes will come up. They are very jolly. It is also episode commentary podcasts, and we do season-long Strictly Come Hamsters, and we do book clubs and all sorts. It's a gay old time.
It's fabulous. It's fabulous. I'm a big fan, and I really enjoy listening to Joe, and he's gorgeous.
Oh,
and so say all of us, especially Cam, because he's his podcast husband.
Yeah, pretty much. I've got to legally say that. Yeah. Joe, the most handsome man I know.
Oh, you don't know many men then, do you?
Not really, no. Not really. Well, I spend loads of time hanging around with these two, so you know.
Right. Excuse me.
You know.
Fair, but
I will say this though: when I'm utterly addicted, should you press play on Happy Times and Places, I promise you're going to lose a lot of your life. All right,
it is but in a good way.
It's the best voice to have in your ear.
One final comment before we go away tonight. It's from Fraser Gregory. He says, "I'm just back from work now. Has Toby told Joe to fuck off again yet?"
Oh, he told me I was gorgeous.
Yeah, well, you're always cruelest to the ones you love, Joe.
He's going to be insufferable now. This is one, you know. He told me you was going to murder me.
Well, we've got Revelation of the Daleks tomorrow, haven't we?
Well, we're on the same team there. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
Well, Joe says that, but as we've seen tonight, he could just change sides that.
Where the wind's blowing.
Right then, that's it for tonight. When we next see you, a fortnight tonight, we will be wrapping up our trial of Series 7 with Inferno going before the court. We've got quite a plethora of special guests for that one. Dave won't be here, so Dylan Reese is going to step in to be fake Dave for that episode. We'll also be joined by Greg and Charlie from the Complete Menagerie Almost, and a certain Mr. Kyle Phillips, who's Cameron's son.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
The next generation.
The next yes. Polish Box, the next generation. Next episode.
Good luck prosecuting Inferno, Cam.
It's the only one Kyle said he would kick.
Ooh.
So he's that's the one. It says Inferno bores him rigid. He's looking forward to it. He's rubbing his hands, waiting for
Youth of
this
today,
episode to happen.
Youth
of today, man.
That national service to sort that boy right out.
Yeah.
Oh well.
That's a fortnight down the road. But in terms of tonight, it's been found not guilty of crimes against Doctor Who, the Ambassadors of Death. We'll see you a fortnight tonight for Inferno. Thanks for watching. Thanks for taking part. Thanks to Toby and Joe for being here. We'll see you,
Thank you guys.
next time. Till then, good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Bye.